Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
You want to come look and see? Or here,
No,
do you want?
you.
Is that
Yeah.
cool?
You can see this old man's face.
Old timer.
This old feller.
Yeah. I can see it.
Then we're
I can
good.
see.
Yeah. Where's my notebook? Oh, okay, I see. First off, just go ahead and just like, who's your artistic inspiration
Artistic inspiration
through the years?
Through the years, I like Jack Kirby a lot when it comes to art and comics.
Yeah.
Because I remember, like, I know you like Marvel, so like when I was growing up in the '90s, there was like these reprints of like X-Men and Avengers, and I just like really fell in love with Jack Kirby's like style. It's like so graphic, and like he does such a good job of doing figures, and I love the colors and sort of psychedelic element to it. So Jack Kirby's somebody that like has always definitely stuck with me throughout the years.
I love that they kept it simple back then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially the backgrounds. Like a lot of times Jack Kirby, like his backgrounds would just be a solid color.
Yeah.
And that's something that like as an artist I probably should do more of, is like more lush like landscapes and backgrounds.
I mean, you definitely use bright colors.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Which
use bright and beautiful. Like, it's striking how colorful it is.
Yeah.
You know?
Which I think that's sort of like with Kirby, and then even like a lot of people like Jim Davis, like with Garfield,
Yeah.
you know, like I like a lot of like Garfield backgrounds because they're so minimalistic.
So you were a comic guy.
Oh, absolutely.
You got your roots off comic. Do you
Well, I mean, like, yeah, I think so. I think in terms of like growing up, like reading comics was definitely, because my parents would take me to art galleries, and I dug art galleries. But when you read a comic, I mean, it's like, you know, I mean, especially with like Kirby, where it's like he did so many panels per page. I mean, you basically get like a whole art gallery in your hands in one comic book, let alone if you read more than one comic book. So I think for me, like, that's how I was really immersed and exposed to art, which was comic books. And so, like, you know, just like 90s X-Men and 90s Marvel.
Well, you're talking about like Todd McFarlane and...
Yeah, which I don't think I read a lot of like Spawn or Image stuff back then.
But he was Spider-Man and
right.
had his hands in Cable. And...
Yeah, but I think for me it was like, I think the X-Men cartoon, I was just like all about that so much. I think I read some Spider-Man and different Marvel stuff, but I really was like way into X-Men above and beyond.
That theme song from the X-Men.
Yeah, it's so iconic.
Yeah, I love that so much.
Which is funny you say that too, because I'm thinking a lot about how, like, with cartoons, the theme song is what people always take away from down the road.
Right.
You know what I mean? If you like, because I watched the DuckTales reboot of Darkwing Duck, the most recent DuckTales episode has a Darkwing Duck reboot, and even before that, they were like teasing that with the Darkwing Duck theme song. And so I imagine that it's weird because, like, I think a lot of people, you could ask them, like, name one Ninja Turtles episode, and they're like, I don't know. But you're like, do the Ninja Turtles theme song,
yeah,
and they're like, Teenage Mutant. You know, like, immediately there's like that sort of connection to it, which is strange because I think
Turtle Power. What are you talking about?
Right.
That song was the bomb.
Yeah, dude. Even to the movies, like the Vanilla Ice.
Yeah, that's Go
Turtle,
Ninja,
Go Ninja, Go.
Awesome.
Yeah, yeah. But that's, I think, the irony to me about a lot of cartoons is that, like, the music element isn't. I mean, with Disney movies,
it's not important, but you can't visually always, like, there's blind people.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And
so they can't really get down cartoons.
But they
right?
can, because
their songs and stuff.
No, I mean, that's why 80s cartoons were so, like, vibrant, even audible.
Yeah.
Is because I guess they were, I don't know if they planned it.
Yeah.
But you can close your eyes and hear things in it.
Yeah, with the sound effects and even just like, yeah, and all those characters, like the way they talked was like so affected. But it was pretty rad, you know, like you had like the high pitched, like, you know, like villain and just sort of like.
It was very, very audible.
Yeah.
Related.
Yeah, which I love. I mean, I think that's one of my favorite things about cartoons.
You've shown it with your body of work there.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And you've been killing as a voice actor with that, because like I mean, even yesterday when you proved that you could do like 3 different voices for the 3 different demon characters and stuff. So yeah, it's cool working with people who like are able to do that.
Just
like,
don't write me in any big parts and I'm good.
So you'll just be like all this sort of like
any short lines I got. But.
Well, so you have like 100 characters, but like within the next like couple of years or so.
Who was like your favorite artist? Like, I know that's a convoluted question.
Yeah.
But like who I know it's probably hard to answer that.
Yeah.
But who is your favorite artist of all time?
Oh man, I mean, like I said, I think that when I think about
of any age.
yeah, of any age, I mean, and I really, it's hard for me to think of any like artists that's sort of like your like famous artists I don't love. I mean, Matisse, Picasso, Warhol, Dali, just all of that. But really, when I think about it, and like I said, I mean, I've read a pretty good bit of Jack Kirby, like X-Men, and just all this stuff that him and Stan Lee did in the '60s. And so when I really think about it, like that's his work is probably the one I've definitely dug the most. I even just like a week ago read not even that long ago read basically a Jack Kirby Avengers issue. So it probably has to be Jack Kirby. But I mean but I love, like I said, like especially modern art. Like I really love like Rothko and like even Jackson Pollock, like a lot of those like minimalistic and abstract expressionists and abstract artists from like the early 1900s. Like that stuff really, I think is really beautiful, especially to see it in a gallery. Like to see like a Mark Rothko piece is just like, it's like trippy. You know what I mean? It's like the closest you can get to being on psychedelics without being on psychedelics. Is seeing like some of those early 1900s minimalism and abstract
They paint
stuff.
weird things in the background.
Yeah. Just those beautiful bright colors sort of, staring you down. It makes you feel kind of like both small and big at the
What
same
do you
time.
think of Bob Ross?
I think Bob Ross is cool. Like, again, it goes back to landscapes. In terms of, like, all the genres of art, I think landscapes might be my least favorite, which is ironic because I think that, like, in terms of, like, an argument, like, that's the most important argument art can make, is that we need to, like, preserve the environment and we need to care about, the ecosystem and stuff. But for me personally, like, if I see a landscape, I'm just immediately like, meh. Like, I gotta see I gotta see, like, figures for some reason. Or I gotta see, like, bright, crazy colors. Like, those two things to me, like, bright, crazy colors, and people or of any sort, or even just figures of any sort.
Facial destruction.
Yeah, and maybe even on animals or just any type of thing that can have a face. But I noticed that when my wife and I went to the High for their grand reopening, because I brought this little sketchbook and was like doodling little sketches of any art that I liked, and I found that I was like, oh man, like I'm way into figures, because it was just my book was covered in like faces. Like there was an African art exhibit there, and I just like every single thing I saw I was drawing basically. So Bob Ross, his whole jam is doing landscapes, and that to me has always been something.
What do you think of Bob Ross as a person?
Oh man, I think he's like I can't think of his name. Won't you be my neighbor?
Mr. Rogers.
Mr. Rogers. He's Mr. Rogers of art.
That's well put.
You know what I mean? Yeah, because it's like he is somebody that's just got a lot of people into art. He's made art something that's accessible. With like paint this cloud by just doing this little dib dabs, and it's like
he's become iconic.
Absolutely.
Simplicity of art.
And I think in the last 2 years, I think I've seen more people talk about Bob Ross and see his image more than I have my whole life. It's weird how there's been this.
You've definitely
resurgence.
seen that more than you've seen his art.
Yeah. Well, yeah, absolutely.
I don't think I've ever seen his art.
Yeah, right.
You know what I'm saying? Like literally.
And that's the irony of his work, is it's always sort of in progress because we're seeing like the footage of him making it and stuff. Yeah. But even that idea of like live painting, which you see so much around town, people do as a performance piece, or them doing a painting. I think that largely comes from Bob Ross doing that on PBS. So his contribution to art, can't be understated. Right. But personally, like I said, I just landscapes.
You're not like trying to look at any Bob Ross art
today. Yeah. Like landscape painting, like I said, the argument of it, which is like we need to preserve this environment that we exist in, is the most important thing we all need to be talking about. But personally, like I said, I want to see people. Could you
see yourself being a landscape artist at any point in your life?
Yeah, I've thought about it. I've honestly had that sort of thought of like, what if I just did like abstracted landscapes to make money? Right. Because I think that like.
I don't think you've ever really struck me, so far as I've known you, as someone that's doing things to make money.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the thing about it, is that I could do it for like a week or whatever. I could make like a landscape painting a day for a week, but then I'd be like, all right, I gotta move on to something else. Right. And I think I've even sort of have gone a little bit in that phase, but it's always been for like a piece or two where I've like forced myself. Because I was with this weird phase where I was like obsessed with the idea of landscape painting. And so I wrote a short story called, I think it's called The Landscape Painterer, which is about a landscape painter who painted landscape painters or whatever, or something along those lines. And I had an EP I put out that was called The Landscape Painter.
I think it's awesome that you say, I went into this phase of landscape painting.
Yeah.
And then I made this record about it.
Yeah.
And then I like wrote a piece on it.
It was,
but I didn't necessarily get into the landscape.
No, I was like thinking about it a bunch because like I was like really like in that, like it was in my brain, and I kept like wanting to like just take this idea of what is a landscape painting, and so I like wrote a short story about it. I did like a painting of it, a storyboard of it, like all this shit. It was in a comic book I did where he was a character that was a landscape painter. But in terms of landscape paintings themselves, I'm more interested in the idea of what it is to be someone who does that. Because, I mean, it really is like, if you think about art, like the history of art, you basically got portrait artists and you got landscape painters. Like, those are the very first two, I think, professions when it comes to the art world. Because people want to see beautiful landscapes. They want to see, like, hills and volcanoes and beaches or whatever. And they want to see people. They want to see, like, their family and people they know preserved in art. And so it's like this old form that still very much exists, especially still very much exists in the South.
Super old.
It's super old, but I feel like the South especially, like, it's one of the biggest genres I see among Southern artists.
Landscape, abstract landscapes.
I mean,
landscapes, abstract, any type of landscape, whether it be,
when we moved in here, and like I said, this article's not about me, so you'll hear me interject things every now and then. They won't be used in the article. When we moved into this house, the lady that sold it to us had a painting of the house.
She went and painted my mother's house.
Oh, that's what it was.
Oh, wow.
And gave it to me at the closing.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
And she did an amazing job of preserving it. And at the
But
time,
it was a landscape painting.
Yeah.
Just like you
Well,
say,
it's
it's
still
pretty
like-
much
oh,
run
yeah.
the run the mill.
Did y'all ever
Clothing,
y'all know who Wayne White is? He did the Tonight video for Smashing Pumpkins.
Yeah.
He's a cartoonist, and he had this thing where he was taking like landscape paintings that you would find at like thrift stores and like secondhand stores basically, and then he would take it and then he would write words like these, like he would like kind of cartoony type words, but he basically would like do that in those paintings, and so kind of reappropriate them. And there was one that was really funny where it was like this dog basically like in this field, like very Southern sort of like dog in a field kind of look, but he wrote LSD above the dog's head, which was just, I don't know, I thought
I've
was really
seen
funny.
that.
Have you seen that?
Yeah, I've seen that.
And it's again another one of those things where it's
That's like Anton Corbijn, who's
the director, right?
well, he was an artist.
Okay.
And he
Before director.
became a director.
Ah.
But he would make his entire thing off of painting in white with a wide brush, letters on things.
Yeah.
And on like whatever the landscape was.
Yeah. And to me, that's something really crazy about that, because like you don't ever see letters and words and text in landscape or portraiture until you basically get to Duchamp or or contemporary artists
or graffiti artists.
Right. That's even more
cool.
interesting because they're like putting letters on the literal landscape itself.
Well, you strike me as closer to a graffiti artist than you do like a traditional artist, and that might be a negative thing.
No.
But I think in overall even your presentation of your work, you have flashed letters up as someone says it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's been around forever, but I think it's context. It's a beautiful context. Would you care to?
I think that definitely graffiti art lends itself mostly to cartoons and to words. Like if you look, especially the early graffiti was pretty much just people writing their names, and then when it's branched out a little bit, you see people basically doing figures and people, but it was obviously cartoony because you have a limited sort of use. And I think for me, that's definitely what I've gravitated towards. Is definitely language, words, and figures.
Right.
Cartoons essentially. So I definitely see a big connection with graffiti art. The irony is that with graffiti art, it's obviously like there's a dangerous element to it because you shouldn't be doing it. It's illegal.
Right.
And then even just the fact that like
But that doesn't take away from the art of it.
No, it definitely doesn't. But I think
it's more valid than a lot of.
Oh, absolutely.
Like,
you and I were talking about Banksy earlier, and I mean, he really.
Right.
I mean, and even that, I forget the guy's name, the real famous one that did the Obey and the Barack Obama Hope pieces.
which they were beautiful.
But I know he was sort of started off a graffiti artist too. So that's the thing is graffiti art, it really has become you know, you could be very famous, and even Basquiat started off, you know, just putting sand all over the place.
Right.
But I think for me, there is always a class element to it, because I mean, graffiti art comes from like, or you know, people probably argue this, but one of the earliest movements of it was in New York, you know, New York City.
In the 70s,
the 70s, yeah, and then people basically not having access to like art supplies and like canvases, so they were just like
they would steal paint cans, like totally go in and just like shove their jackets full of as many as they could get, and then take off and go do their
yeah,
their
totally. Which is really rad, because like for me, and learning about folk art in the past like I guess 5 years, like, and folk art and graffiti art, this sort of element of like, I have never had an art teacher or an art class or even know where to get art supplies, but I am an artist. I say I'm an artist, therefore, you know, spray paint, go to town. Or with folk art, like wood, house paint, like using materials that like aren't your traditional oil paint and canvas and stuff. And I think that, to me, especially with my cartoon, because I use Microsoft PowerPoint, and I've heard of people using PowerPoint at different times in our lives, but never really sticking with it as like, you know, this is my medium.
Right.
And so I really have been thinking a lot about this idea of there being folk art that's folk video art or folk animation. And I think that's something I really almost want to like, because so oftentimes people give me flack about it.
Well,
they're like, why don't you use...
Working in, and I've had this discussion with somebody else too about you. But working in PowerPoint, you're limited to a certain amount of frames.
Right. Oh, no, you're not limited to a certain amount of frames. You can have as many frames as you want.
Well,
the tools are
as many as you can fit in.
Technically.
Yeah. I'm not trying to take away from it. You're limited to however many frames you want to put in there. Let me rephrase that.
Well, see, but the way I had been using it, I was doing 1 frame per second. But actually, I've learned now that I can do traditional
30 frames per
second.
second.
Or however many basically frames. I can make things move. And I started doing that in a little bit in the last 2 episodes, where things move a little bit. Like when Muddy's tripping, like was the first time I actually did like use the actual animation tool from PowerPoint.
Right.
And so things actually move in a fluid way like they traditionally do.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it happen. It bursts through, but I think that's what's great about what you're doing is you don't feel like you have to move all the way into that. You can do it the way you want to do it.
Right.
And it be the frames that you want to frame it. But, and like I said, I'll get back to you later on like my feeling about if you should move into another medium.
Yeah.
But for now, I'm not even implying up or down on that. I'm saying that I appreciate, like that's what caught me to begin with about your work, is that it was frame for frame, and when you wanted to put that extra frame in there, you did.
Yeah.
But it wasn't necessarily like if I didn't have epilepsy, or if I did have, if I had epilepsy, it would have triggered it. But because I don't, I enjoy
You're
it.
down with it.
I really do enjoy that.
Yeah.
That's kind of like, it's like you really kind of are putting graffiti to video.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
I do. I think you're right. I think the core of what I'm doing is the core of what graffiti artists and folk artists do. And I think that, see, that's the irony, is I think people who like, it drives me crazy a little bit with people who have access to materials, who can make art traditionally, who basically make graffiti art, because then it's like, why are you defacing property if you don't have to? Or even like, why are you trying to make your stuff look, I hate the word primitive, but that's the sort of bad term that's used for folk artists.
Well, that's probably what you deal with on a closer level.
But see, and that's the difference for me, is that like I have had for the past forever basically office jobs. You know what I mean? And so like PowerPoint was always the sort of tool that was always right there at my disposal. You know, I didn't even know that Toon Boom existed until recently, let alone, you know, I even tried to use it recently and couldn't really make heads or tails of it. Whereas like over the past, I don't know, what was it, 6 years, however long it's been, the years I've been using PowerPoint, like my skill level has really grown really quickly. And it's kind of nuts how fast, how much better I've gotten over the time period. And so it really is more a few things. And one, it's how cheap it is. you know, it's basically free to use versus like getting some kind of program, even like Adobe Photoshop, Adobe Flash, which is, I mean, it's kind of expensive, you know, versus being free.
I talked to, not to interrupt, but I talked to someone who said, when I said, you know, I really love what he's doing.
Yeah.
I really do. And I'm totally behind that. Like if you did a video that wasn't PowerPoint for Bad Glamour, I would be slightly offended. But
I wouldn't even know how to do that. You know, it's like, what would that even be?
I mean, but at the same time, my counterpoint to that was, I feel like if he moved on to a better or bigger production, like frame, he could just blow people's minds. But the person that I was talking to kind of clarified it for me, is that you do it because that's what you want to do.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You could have easily picked up any one of those programs and made whatever you wanted to make off of it, but you do it because it looks the way it looks.
Yeah.
And
because nobody's stuff looks the way
it doesn't.
No.
Yeah.
It definitely
like
makes
it's very
your work
uniquely,
very unique.
Yeah, it's very unique, and I think that's something that I think cartooning is kind of lost because so many people are using the same types of programs.
But you step back from cartoony as to like be blatant cartoony. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, I like that.
Nice.
I really like that.
So there's a book I read called Play Anything by this teacher at Georgia Tech who teaches digital media. His name is Ian Bogost. And he wrote this whole book, which is basically like, it doesn't matter what medium you use. If you just stick with that medium, like you'll get good at it. And so I've been thinking a lot in terms of like poetry, because like haikus, like when you write a haiku, it's like 3 syllables, 5 syllables, 3 syllables, right? The limitations and the minimalism involved with using that form, which is like a program, which is like a computer program. If you use a haiku, it's very, very limiting. But no one ever basically says that like, oh, you are a haiku writer, like, brr. Like there's always like, yeah, that's cool, you know, that's your thing, cool. And then, but the other extreme with poetry, like you could be like, say, stream of consciousness, right? And be like T.S. Eliot and write The Wasteland. It's like 20 pages long, and it's kind of like basically like a very abstract short story, basically. And that's poetry too, and there's no rules or limitations and regulations of that. And I see that kind of as the difference between like these programs that are, you know, people use all the time, like Toon Boom and 3D animation, versus I see like PowerPoint is being closer to sort of like a haiku.
Yeah.
And so the irony is that like people, it's this weird thing I've just come across all the time.
Everybody always feels like they want to step it up, right?
Right, exactly. But you don't say that to people who use a haiku versus who use like stream of consciousness.
Here's the thing.
It's like Run the Jewels using cat sounds for their entire album.
Right, exactly.
Well, I mean,
exactly. And it's weird too because minimalism, like in terms of the art field, like in terms of like visual arts and fine art, has been such a big, has been like the big deal. Like everyone's been so into it and say like, oh, these minimalistic artists are like geniuses, but yet you don't get that with animation for some reason. It doesn't that doesn't happen with this medium, and I don't get that, and I want to try to like
I have to look at it like it's an analog.
Right.
It's an analog between solid pictures and what I'm sure you hear plenty of comparison to South Park.
Yes,
you're wearing a South Park shirt,
and that's the thing people say.
But it's a literal analog. It's like you deciding like where you want to be in that position.
Right.
Would you not say that?
100%. And I think even with music, like in the early to mid 2000s, there was a bunch of bands that started. Like there's a genre called shit-fi. That wasn't even lo-fi, it was shit-fi. Yeah. And I always, like, that was something I thought was really rad, actually, because it was, like, a lot of, like, punk rock and roll bands, like, having intentionally shitty recordings, and I always just gravitated towards that almost intentionally unpleasing sort of look, you know? And like I said, I mean, it's happened with every, I think, genre, but it hasn't happened really with animation. Like, because animation has this weird, like, holy grail status where like you have to do 24 frames a minute, and like you have to basically use these programs and 3D animation's the best of all animation. And it's like, but who decided these rules?
I don't buy into that.
And I don't either. But that's the irony, is that like people I wouldn't think believe these kinds of things, like say these types of things to me, and I feel like I tend to be the brunt of this debate.
Well, I mean, you're the brunt because you put yourself right there. Like I said, you put yourself right in between a solid painting, a picture that you just look at,
right,
and like
a comic,
an anime, or
right,
whatever.
Yeah.
Well, it's great to make people think.
Something different.
What do you think?
No, I mean just sparking the debate of people, people that are on one side or the other, to make them actually think about, well, why is, your style of art, what elevates it? Because it is elevated, and it's consistent with itself.
Yeah.
And people who might look at that style and kind of think, oh, well.
I mean, I would think that
I could do that.
Yeah,
I would have easily thought that people after episode 1 and then seeing episode 2 would be able to say, okay, this is the idea he's going for. And I mean, like,
made a world.
What are your raw inspirations for the Post Punk Mutant Musicians? Like, what is the raw inspiration? Because I've seen the comics.
Yeah.
But what are the inspirations for the comics? Like,
it's bands. It's so like this record, Raw Pie by Personal and the Pizzas. That's this record that's like, it's not a parody record, but it's funny at points, because it's like this San Francisco band. They're acting like they're from New Jersey, so like they're like the whole
That's
Fonzie.
Awesome. That's kind of awesome.
It's so funny, and like, and some of their songs are like, like like the song like I can read, and he's like, yeah, I can read. And I don't know, it's really put on, and it's like not theatrical, but it's like, it's kind of like a concept record, and they're not a concept band, but there's a bit of that, and I would just like love that record. And so that's where Pizza Pair and the Pizzas came from. It was like me, and even in that episode, I showed that record. I showed the Personal Pizza and Personal and the Pizzas tape and the album art in the video for one of the Pizza Perry songs. And then like Modern Lovers has a song called I'm Straight, which has a reference to Hippie Johnny. And that's, I've always wanted to do a dissertation on that song, because like Modern Lovers were really one of the proto-punk bands that really like were the segue to like the Ramones and like, all those other bands and so on and so forth. And in that one song, it's basically this weird dichotomy where you've got Hippie Johnny is basically dating this girl, and Hippie Johnny basically never plays it straight, right? So there's this whole thing of like almost like homophobic element with like the 60s culture being kind of like flower power, gay and sort of derogatory, people using that derogatorily. And then even like, but even musically, like 60s bands like jamming out, right? And so Jonathan Richman with that song was basically saying like, there's this new thing, I don't know what it's called, but it's punk, but before that term existed, but it's basically like, it's direct. Like he was basically saying that like, there's no really like solos that go on for 10 minutes. There's like, every song is like very direct. And he was basically saying that, like, you're not fucked up when you make these songs. Like, it's not about the drugs and being high. And he was basically saying it's also straight, like it's sort of hetero. And so he created this weird dichotomy that just, I think about all the time, because, like, Minor Threat in the 80s wrote a song, Straight Edge, which that's where the term comes from if you basically are sober and don't, like, work a program, which I really think he was channeling that song, I'm Straight. Yeah, and so there's this weird secret history with that term that goes all the way back to Modern Lovers. So Hippie Johnny, the character in Post Punk, is basically from that song. And then even Weed Demon, there's a song by Waves called Weed Demon that's like this really haunting, beautiful song. That's just like him singing with electric guitar, and there's no like percussion and drums, but that song, like, it really affects me in this way that I always like really love. So a lot of the characters are basically, and even Duck the Punk is basically like Iggy Pop and the Stooges. Because I read like Please Kill Me, and Iggy Pop would like roll around in broken glass, like without his clothes on.
He would literally shit himself.
He would, I think it was more G.G. Allen.
No, I mean Iggy Pop did it too. I'm
okay.
Sure, yeah.
And so like basically
G.G. Allen would shit in his hand
and then eat it,
right? Throw it at the
and then crowd. And G.G. Allen's going to be like there's a parody character of him down the road and stuff too. So like I think that's the thing about it is like this cartoon is a love letter to rock and roll music.
Right.
And even like
I almost want to say it's not a parody, but like
it's
a self-discussion.
Yeah.
Of rock, punk.
Yeah.
And I don't know, where did you get Post Punk Mutant Musicians? I get the Mutant Musicians part.
Right.
What's the Post Punk part?
So basically, and again, the first episode talks about fucking Lamonts, and like Remy plays that the Easter egg song for the other two guys, and so that's like kind of like the Ramones. Basically, that song's supposed to be like the Ramones, and he even says like we're buying into a genre that's over what he said 50 years old or something, because it's supposed to take place in the now, right? It's supposed to take place in contemporary time period, and so they're not. All these musicians aren't punk musicians, because basically, to me, punk rock is very specifically like New York in the 70s, and then the UK.
The Clash is gone.
Right, exactly. Right. So basically, if you even play punk music, you're not playing punk music, because that's it. It's like the same way with like rockabilly. Like if you're a rockabilly band now, you're still basically derivative.
I think what's important about it is that you kind of cover is that it covers the bands that come off of punk.
Right, yeah.
So that's the post-punk.
That's the post-punk element, yeah, exactly. And I over the whole course of the whole shindig, like I want to like do like shoegaze and even like sort of like 90s, like basically like literally any sort of genre of rock.
Well, it's like the Green Day folks are the joke in your, you know, the famous punk is the most humorous that you would touch on. It seems like, judging off of, you know, how you deal with other punk sounds.
Yeah.
Not even punk, but I mean, you kind of make it humorous that pop, or you know.
Yeah.
You don't just like narrow it down to one thing.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I basically, because I think even for like us making these records, like I wouldn't want us to basically have to be like pigeonholed to have to do like one type of music. You know what I mean? And that's what's been really fun, is that like being able to outsource some of these bands' ideas, and then even just like get, like we were talking about like Negative E's being Lydia and Adams essentially, you know, and that kind of thing of basically getting our friends who like can play music but don't necessarily like feel the need to like, you know, play once a, you know what I mean, like do all the work. Yeah, but the beauty of it is like, especially love it because I can like give them these lyrics, and which I think for a lot of people is the hardest part with being in a band, is having somebody contribute lyrics for whatever reason. And so like it's been really cool because I'm like, I got some lyrics for you, and I've even got sort of a concept of like, this is the type of genre that this music is, or even like these are the people in the cartoon, it's just bass and drums. So I give like kind of almost like a not a rough draft, but like kind of like a blueprint. And then it's been really fun to see my friends, like some of them who already are in bands or who start bands, like I said, like Adams and Lydia, and it becomes part of what they do, is they basically like take these ideas and flesh them out into like recordings and stuff. So that's the thing about it, is that like it's been really fun to just do a bunch of different genres for that reason. But post-punk too is a genre. Like there's bands, and that's honestly like what's become. I mean,
it's a genre that's become other genres.
It is, but there's a weird sort of element to post-punk because it's like very literal. It's like literally anything that's come musically after New York punk, but it also is a genre of punk, like The Fall, and even a lot of like goth bands and stuff.
I got what you're saying.
Like basically, like, which is like, it's basically funk. It's like this weird thing that happened with a lot of British bands, like Gang of Four, where they were taking punk and they were adding more funk elements to it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, hip hop.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
I mean,
yeah, exactly. That's arguably
it really
post-punk.
covers anything that kind of treed out from that.
Yeah. But to me,
which is the music that we make, you know.
Right.
Totally.
Yeah,
right
I feel like y'all are very much post-punk
it's
too.
It's electronic. It's just bigger than punk. It's a offshoot.
Because like indie rock or indie and post-punk are almost interchangeable as labels. But what's weird too is that like a lot of jam bands and a lot of post-punk bands like The Fall and Gang of Four and like even Television, there's a weird sort of like weird element where like, you know, Television and like Fish are like almost like in the same ballpark. Like there's like jam bands and post-punk bands are actually really close to being the same thing. And so like in the cartoon there's always this like this war, this sort of dichotomy between the punks and the hippies.
I see what you mean, yeah.
But they're not like,
I mean, I'd immediately connected the hippie side with Fish and Grateful Dead.
right,
Yeah.
but see, the thing is like, I love those bands strangely enough and grew up with all those bands, and I got into like Television and like Gang of Four, you know, just stuff like since that's more like punk, but the two things aren't really that different, ironically. Like there's actually a lot of similarities, and you know, like I said, there's like a very thin line between post-punk and jam band, and so like that's a big thing about the cartoon too, is like the hippies are like the bad guys, but there really isn't any bad guys, because like Duck the Punk is probably like the most like immoral, crazy, one of the craziest characters in the whole shindig.
But
And
besides I mean, most of the monsters are all in that frame.
yeah, definitely the monsters are like.
Would you consider Duck the Punk a monster or a human?
He is. I in my head have decided that he's a monster. Yeah, so a human or a mutant basically is someone who looks like we do. They have to look as human as to that side of the spectrum as possible. And so a monster then is anybody who's animal-like at all, or who actually is a straight-up monster.
Which is definitely Duck the Punk.
Yeah, exactly. So Duck the Punk is basically arguably a monster. Because I mean, like, and if you think about it, like if you or I, if any of us saw somebody that had a beak on their face, that would be like a monstrosity. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think that I think Duck definitely falls on that side.
Would you care to give like an overview of what post-punk musicians, aside from what you just gave us, just a base story of what it is?
So I guess like Robbie starts Whack Flag, right? And that's skipping over a bunch of stuff. But Robbie starts Whack Flag.
Talk to me like I don't know who the characters are.
Okay. So Robbie starts Whack Flag, and Whack Flag's obviously a parody, not a parody, but it's
it's Black Flag.
Exactly. It's Black Flag, and I think Black Flag has become one of the punk rock bands that is probably the most popular, I would say. Like, it's strange how, like, you know, people have their sort of, like, thoughts on, like, the Ramones or Sex Pistols, and they're like, oh, no. But, like, unanimously, people with Black Flag are like, yeah. Like, Black, you know, it's weird to find somebody who doesn't like Black Flag. And I think
the same way with the Misfits.
Dude, yeah.
In the same,
absolutely.
Same band.
But the weird thing about Black Flag, though, is, like, that later Henry Rollins era Black Flag stuff is pretty jammy. Like, it's kind of post-punky, it's kind of jammy. So they really
I don't think you would be talking about it if you didn't love it at a point.
Oh no, I absolutely love it, and I've gotten way more into that later Black Flag stuff that's kind of jammier, that's kind of funkier. The songs are longer, and it's got that funky vibe to it. And so even with like that band that's seen as like the punk band, they kind of are the perfect definition of a band that started off like doing like 40-minute long or 40-second long songs, you know, and then eventually towards the end, we're kind of a jam band. You know, Henry Rollins would talk about how much he loved Government Mule and stuff. And so, like, Robbie starting this band, like Whack Flag, to me, it's like that band represents that dichotomy almost better than a lot of other bands. They you know, basically doing early on songs that are, like, real thrashy and really heavy and raw and short, and then later doing, like, almost like jazz fusion, arguably. So, anyways, Robbie starts that band, and Duck simultaneously starts Duck the Punk and the Jerky Jerks, which is like, to me, like Iggy Pop and the Stooges. But it's that same sort of idea of like Duck the Punk and the Jerky Jerks basically playing minimalistic, short rock and roll songs, basically. And those two bands, like Robbie and Duck are pretty much kind of the main characters. But once they start their bands, everyone else is like, oh, we should start a band.
I love the girls band.
Oh, the Heartbreakers #3.
Yes, I love it.
Yeah, and to me that's like, I think I was actually thinking about that today, because like noise rock I think is almost like the most democratic of all genres of music, because like with punk rock it's like you have to have the tiniest bit of talent. You got to at least basically be able to play a power chord, or you know what I mean. You can't just literally start a punk rock band without like, you know, having at least a guitar and the knowledge of basically doing a power chord. Whereas like with noise, like, you can literally do that anywhere, anytime, with anything. You know what I mean? Like, a person can go on stage and just start stomping and yelling and you know, punching their... You know what I mean? Like, you can be a noise band and not need instruments and not need literally any pre-planning or talent. And so it really is kind of the most... It's truly the most democratic, I think, genre.
It's also... It's not an indictment.
Right.
Or the opposite of that.
And so I think it's to me I like because I think my cartoon, I hate to use the term broy, but some of it can kind of be a little broy with like.
I mean, I think that there's a flow to it.
Yeah.
There's a flow to it that it doesn't. There are characters that are broy.
Right.
But when you have Alien Jesus telling like just not even necessarily necessary to the plot that he's there. But you've already established him.
Right. So he basically has to come back.
He's there.
Yeah.
Just
he
for
exists.
whatever reason.
Right.
And then you have how many characters?
Oh God.
How many characters?
It's too many. I mean, it's.
No, it's not. I mean, it's not.
I mean, it's not too many, but I mean, it's like to count. I've had to guess. I think maybe 50 or maybe. Are
you serious?
There's a lot.
That's a lot of characters.
No, there's a lot. No, that's the thing is the longer it goes, the more you get of the others. Like Alien Jesus is gonna get a storyline in which he's a main character, which is called the prequels. Like he's in the prequels, yeah. So it's like, and that's the thing is like anytime I use anybody character wise, they're coming back. Or I mean, not literally everybody, because like Cloud Bro, he gets killed and he never comes back.
Right.
But the ones that like
or the pumpkin.
Oh yeah, like Halloween Head. Yeah. But so you got the Heartbreakers #3. They're a noise band, and they start because like Whack Flag turns into Pizza Perry and the Pizzas, which Perry wants to be in that band because he wants to be popular.
Right.
That's like literally his motivation, which I think is a terrible motivation for being a band. You know what I mean? It's like.
But it's so it happens.
It's normal.
It happens all the time.
Yeah.
And I remember when we showed one of the films at the festival, like we were talking about that because the idea of like, I want to make the shortest song that exists. Like okay, well there's a minute long, or there's a second long song. Well then I'll make a millisecond long song, and then you can just literally keep going further and further down that road. And you can do that with anything when it comes to music. Like, I want to be in the band that wears the most hats. You're like, well, my band wears more hats than your band. And you can, like, get into these, like, weird competitive things with things that are fucking pointless. And it has nothing to do with the actual music, really. It just becomes this, like, other thing that can become competitive. And, I mean, so, writing songs about pizza, it's like, yeah, of course people are going to like songs about pizza because it's delicious. It's pizza. Everyone has like childhood memories of pizza.
I've noticed an extreme theme of pizza between you and your label that you're on.
Yeah, which I don't even know how that happened. Where it was like we did the Pizza Coolest record. We did Adams and I did the Pizza Perry record, and then even his label being called Pizza Hell. I think that is the thing Gloom Cocoon gets associated with most. Is the people they're a pizza. They're the band that sings a lot about pizza.
Is the name of Jason's band.
Yeah, I'm in a band called Gloom Cocoon. Still, even though we lost our bass player.
I mean, but y'all are rad.
Thank you.
Y'all are rad. Augusta band.
And that's the big part of the cartoon is a lot of songs that Gloom Cocoon does. In addition to like y'all and Laser Bones and other bands.
We're not there quite yet.
No, we're already there.
You're gonna make me play some music for you tonight.
Yeah.
So you can hear.
Oh, I can't wait to hear that.
We don't have vocals on it yet.
Okay, I'm so excited about that.
No, you're talking about the one we did for the show.
Yeah.
And just for the record, me and Rachel do music.
Bad Glamour.
And we're doing a piece for the Sweet Ass Mutant Musicians.
Y'all are the indie pops. So basically indie pops start to exist around this time in the story, and they don't ever go away.
But people don't necessarily like them at first.
No, it's not that because
well, Hale likes rock.
He like Creed.
Is that right?
I think they just like Creed.
Yeah, somebody in Hale likes Creed, but that's real life though. That's real life.
Yeah, but and so there's indie pops. There's French Fry Freddy. Basically,
that's a whole other genre.
There's a whole other genre, yeah. And that really is Laser Bones. Like my friends Greg and a married couple, Greg and Ellen and Charleston, who are just such a fan of those people. Like y'all, it's weird how these married couples that's the best. Everyone should just get married and start a band with their significant other. That should be that solves all the problems.
Way harder than you think.
But it solves all the problems with being in a band. It's because otherwise you're gonna break up.
We're the only people that are like, hey man,
Yeah.
you want to put our music in there? No, I'm just playing.
But yeah, I want Post Punk to. Yeah, it's weird because like you got Adams and Lydia, y'all two. And
If it didn't have that
and
punk
even
flavor through it,
uh-huh.
like y'all were playing it loud on the tape, on the video that we watched. It wasn't like you turned it down in relation to the scene.
Yeah.
Y'all were playing it loud, playing what you like.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of Gloom Cocoon's whole thing. Would you like to just tell me, I need to know who this is. I'm just changing the subject, but who are your musical inspirations for?
So Gloom Cocoon is really this idea that I think I've had for a long time, and then finally playing with Rick and Adams, and then now Carrie, I was able to finally get people on board with this idea. And that idea is to take basically the Grateful Dead and the Ramones and combine them. And specifically, like, what I love about the Ramones is that they basically do, like the first album, like the Ramones self-titled album, is really one song. Because it's like, when one song ends, they literally, 1, 2, 3, 4, go to the next song.
Well, you guys definitely do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's one of my favorite things about punk rock, right? Is that I love punk rock bands because hopefully they're doing it right, and they're just basically not giving you any breaks in between their songs.
Right.
So you are dancing, you are into it the entire time. So many bands don't get that. So many bands go on stage and they'll play a song, they're like, now it's story time, or it's like, now it's time to like hang out like and not play music for a minute while we do whatever, tune or just like fucking look around the room or whatever. And it's like, no, play your next fucking song, like and so that's one of my favorite things about punk is like punk rock. When a punk rock band gets on stage, they literally as soon as they start, everybody is immersed in that experience. And you don't basically the punk band doesn't let go of you until they're done with their last song.
They're in control.
Yeah, and that exactly they're in complete control. And I think that to me is the big pro of punk band. One of the big cons, of course, is that all their songs can easily sound the same. Like if
that's the whole pitfall of punk in general.
Right, exactly. But so on the other extreme, on the other side of the spectrum, jam bands, right? Their big weakness is that they play songs way too effing long. Like their song on the record, like a Fish song or Widespread.
And they sound exactly the same.
They do, but see, they don't sometimes because they'll play a bunch of different types of genres.
That's just
like a jam band. Well, no, I agree with you. A lot of times they do, but at least they'll try different genres. So like they'll try like a bluegrass song, then a funk song, and then a reggae song. So they'll at least mix it up.
Right.
In terms of the genres that they're doing. And that was something that I think is great about jam bands and post-punk bands, is that they never limit to themselves to a certain genre. Is that like, they're never like, we are a rock band or a punk rock band. They're like, we're reggae, we're jazz, we're literally wherever we want to be. I think that's a big pro from the jam band thing. Even more specifically, I love when jam bands would basically also they would actually kind of sandwich songs as well, like punk bands do.
Oh, and just lay them completely.
But they would, exactly. With a punk band, with Ramones, it's like this, stop, 1, 2, 3, 4, next song. But a jam band would have no break, where it'd be like da 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 da, boom, bop. Like it would go seamlessly in. Yeah. And that's something I've never seen other genres of music do.
The big thing about a jam band is that you're going to see a show, and I think when you go to see a show, every show person does that. You know what I'm saying? I think it like jam bands are totally different than their records.
Yeah. They're worse.
Well, they're definitely worse, but
I mean, not worse, but they're not as good.
Like I said, that won't be included. But that's definitely
no, but I mean, like, I love jam band records, and I think some jam bands can be good live, but I think if a jam band just took their records, which already has a lot of solos and instrumentation on it, and just played their album, yeah, exactly. But and you can add covers and add different songs, but just stick to your record. Your records are already good.
My point is that every band does that.
Yeah.
Like 9 Inch Nails is gonna consolidate songs and like play 3 in a row without taking that break.
Sure.
But I think the difference between a jam band and everything else is they randomize in their performance and drag it out to enormous proportion.
Absolutely. And I think that's the pro and the con right there, is that like with a punk song or a punk band, like a Ramones song is like there's like one Ramones song and they rewrote it like 100 times. Whereas a jam band, like they do have a lot of different concepts. Like I said, like okay, reggae song, okay, now bluegrass song. Like they'll do it in different genres, but every damn song they do is way longer than it should be, basically. And so that in a nutshell was like, and then also the last thing is with the jam band, what they do right is the covers. Like jam bands, like Mo, for example, I saw them multiple times, and then each night the last song they would play would be a cover song, and they probably recycle some of those cover songs to a certain extent. But they would do a different cover song on different nights. And so that's where I got the one and done cover idea from. Where I was like, we're going to do a cover song as our last song for every set, but we'll never do it ever again live.
You don't have to learn it again.
Exactly. But also people who ask for it, because if you do a cover song in a band, it's so easy for people to be like, dude, play the cover song I like.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh man. And so then it becomes part of your set.
Right. Yeah. You're doing great. Why don't you just go ahead and tell us exactly who you are? And what's the name of your company?
Well, okay, so I'm Jason Walter. I guess my company would be Post Punk Mutant Musicians, but that's strange because that's like not a subsidiary, but I guess like Pizza Hell Productions is the studio where we film Post Punk Mutant Musicians. And
do you consider yourself a part of Pizza Hell?
Yeah, I would say so, because I mean that is like the physical space where where the voices are recorded and stuff. And then even Gloom Cocoon's like the band, or one of the bands that's like we're sort of like the house band for that cartoon.
Right.
So that's a part of it too. That's the weird thing about what we do is it's like there's too many different names for it. It's like Pizza Hell, Post Punk Mutant Musicians, Gloom Cocoon, even like my cartoon.
Gloom Cocoon's your band.
That's the band, yeah. But see, that's the thing is like Gloom Cocoon is also like the biggest band that makes songs for the cartoon. So it's like real tied in with that. And then even my comic book that the cartoon's based on is called No Funnies. So there's like a weird discrepancy there between like the name of the book and then the name of the cartoon that comes from the book. So
right.
I always had a problem with that. I've always like had a problem with like coming up with like one name or title for like my brand. It's always been even when I've done like a bunch of graphic novels, like I should have just done like one title for all the graphic novels because it really was one story, but I kept always like changing the name of it and stuff. So I think that's important to do if you're doing shit.
Yeah,
is
you
to
should
not
definitely have
don't change your band
name
name or don't change like try to have at least one title to which people can find your.
I could see how you could get used to it in the climate of having 9 different bands that you've been involved with.
9 different graphic novels, yeah. That was always the sort of reasoning is like, this is a different thing than before, but really it's always been a continuation.
So there's no real like name for your art studio, your art.
Yeah, because I mean it's just me on my laptop basically. Right. You know what I mean? It's like PowerPoint on my laptop is like the extent of like how the actual art gets made, and then me getting images off of like Facebook, which is kind of how I archive all my art basically. Right. It's just like pulling stuff from my Facebook.
Sounds dangerous.
Just someone steals my laptop and they have my whole studio.
Getting on Facebook, like one day that might be gone. You think that'll ever come?
Facebook non-existing?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think Facebook will be here for like long before, because now it's like if you die, like people are like,
Blake's not on Facebook.
Good. Did you deactivate it, or are you just not on it at all? Like, have you ever been on it? Wow, that's impressive.
Negative.
Like, are any social media or just
like Instagram?
Oh, see, that's Facebook though. That's a subsidiary of Facebook, so he's on Facebook.
Yeah, I'm on Facebook.
Like disguised as Instagram,
Disguised.
Is that really? Are they the same?
They're the same. They're on my same. Yeah. But Instagram is owned by Facebook.
He says I'm on Instagram, but I don't think I am.
You are. It's like a very much a dad right now. I think I'm on Instagram.
I made one for you.
See,
I'm a fat old dad. Did you make me one? I think that's what happened.
Sonny, you made me a Facebook profile.
I also stole images from you from 8 years ago.
Naked. This is stuff that's going to be podcast material.
It's that comedy gold.
Yeah, we like to laugh a lot.
Yeah.
When I'm talking to this guy, it happens.
But I've never laughed before.
Listen.
He's never laughed and he's never had a Facebook profile.
Yeah.
I've never seen but that's a subsidiary of laughing.
It's the Instagram of laughing.
He'll make you laugh though, once or twice.
Yeah.
What a bastard.
But just
that's
once
an
or twice.
asshole, right?
Not
now,
3.
for real. If you really want to get down to it,
Mm.
people that can make you laugh
Mm.
and don't ever laugh, that's a dark individual.
That's a good. You should do like a improv or stand-up. It's very difficult to be funny and not laugh.
No way.
Yeah. Nah.
It's not hard.
I don't know, man. I can't do it.
If I could have like somebody listening to me from another room or something,
Right.
that'd be cool.
Nice.
Well, that's what's happening right
But
now.
not like, yeah, I see them.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Nobody's literally like listening to us talk right now.
Except for God. Or Jesus.
Okay, that's a good question. That's what I wanted to ask you too. You have a lot of religious
Yeah.
tone in in your work.
Yeah.
Do you believe in God?
Do I believe in God? So, the...
It's okay if you do.
Yeah, well, it's just like
I'm
such
cool
a
with it.
loaded question. It's like I have to get like really academic with answering that question.
You don't have to, man.
No, I mean, like, I like a lot of what like Carl Jung, sort of like approaches it with just like a lot of like science, which is the fact that like mankind evolving into humans would have these like dreams, and in these dreams that have these archetypal images of like people with wings and like talking animals and burning bushes and all these like, which is basically a religious iconography. And they would they'd have these dreams, and then they would tell these stories basically sort of based on those dreams. And a lot of those stories sort of for them explain why things were, like with Greek, it's like, was it Demeter or Persephone and Hades, like that
Right.
story teaches you where seasons come from, and so a lot of it was like before science existed, before they could do like scientific inquiry, they were like, this is a story that's a metaphor. It's a metaphor. It's not supposed to be taken literally. And so I think, and that to me right there is the biggest problem when we talk about God, is the fact that like people, when they say, do you believe in God, what they're actually asking are, do you literally believe that Jesus Christ was a superhero?
No,
well, I know that.
Yeah,
But see,
God.
right, and I know what you asking that, what it means, but I'm saying like I have to sort of clarify this for whomever is
Right.
listening and wants to like hate me right now based on what I'm saying, because it gets that serious that quickly, and I think so,
it definitely does get serious in that conversation.
Yeah, and so I always like to sort of, that's the thing I like to start from, is that like I believe that God is a metaphor that basically, and this is kind of from me reading Joseph Campbell and Carl Jung and talking about the fact that like when we talk about the sort of idea of like transfiguration or like or even transcendence, right? That's always the image for that is God. Jesus Christ sort of like transfigured.
Or any worldly religion.
Or any god or prophet or sort of like religious character has that ability to sort of like
send your soul to the next
right.
Nah.
Basically do some kind of magical stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I think that is basically like
that's my big problem with it all.
Is
magic.
Yeah.
I believe in ghosts.
You literally believe in ghosts?
I literally believe in ghosts.
Okay.
But I don't believe in magic.
Gotcha.
It's two different things.
Two different things. But I I think that
why aren't you talking? That makes me, when you do something like that and it's so awesome that it makes me laugh.
Yeah, you gotta get on camera.
You could easily be talking.
Gotta get that
I
camera
could do it
time.
in front of the camera.
Yeah, right there you go. Stick your head in to the side. Okay, now the audience knows.
It's context now.
Yeah, the context. We're not forwarding it. We're not keeping it secret. But yeah, I mean, God is so with Campbell talking about like transcendence. He talks about like music and art and literature, even film now,
or what we leave behind.
Well, but those are the things that allow you to experience God. I mean.
I got you.
Yeah, and I truly believe that. I do think that like for me, times where I've seen like art exhibits or like read books or just whatever, seen films, like that's always gives me the feeling that I'm like on hallucinogens or psychedelics, even
closer to God.
Right, closer to God, even though I'm not like having like a.
Do you think it's
not
because
peyote or anything.
Maybe subliminally you believe that man is God?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
recreate.
I think that animals probably like believe in God as like a giant animal. Like I bet your cat up there basically believes in
He
God.
probably thinks you're God, just so you know.
I don't know, man. I think that cat probably thinks it's like there's a giant cat that exists in outer space.
Right.
That it basically like that giant cat is dictating what we're doing. In the same way that like if you really simplify religion, it's people believing there's a giant dude in the outer space who like is rolling the dice, and that's like what makes my shit happen in reality,
right.
basically, right? I mean, that's so. Yeah, I mean, I think that our human sense of God is based on our human experiences, and that it's very much contingent on human experience and
right.
our human history. But yeah, I mean, the cartoon, it's like I use a lot of religious characters, you know, Alien Jesus, and I mean, even Freddy.
There's a hell.
Right, there's a hell. There's
a bar in hell.
There's a bar that's hell. Satan he's a bartender there. He owns it. There's ghosts. You know, Freddy's a ghost and Pepper's a ghost. So there's a lot of like, and even monsters. I mean, monsters are basically religious imagery too. I mean, the Book of Revelations is filled with monsters. So yeah, I like a lot of archetypal characters, man. You know, even animal people who are animals. That's like the oldest religion of like people would kill an animal and then basically pray to that animal before they ate it, because it was basically like, you died for me to live.
Right.
And I think to me that's like one of the coolest ways to look at religion.
That's
like
Native American.
Right. And it's real simple, but it's real deep too. This sort of like, I'm grateful for the fact that I'm able to like, this animal's able to die and that I'm able to live because it's dead. And that I too will one day die so that some other animal or organism can survive. And like that sort of like circle of life bullshit is like real deep and real simple, but like really resonates. And so I think anytime you see a character, even in Disney, even you see like in DuckTales, like they kind of represent, strangely enough, that going back to that old school like native, you know, just tribal people praying to the animals they're eating, because they're basically like, you know.
That's pretty dark to put on DuckTales.
That show can get pretty dark, man. That show can be pretty.
So totally different about Chip and Dale right now.
I was thinking a lot about like, you know, the 80s is like Greed is Good. Like that is
that's
like
what it was all
best.
about.
Yeah, dude. That's the best example.
Scrooge McDuck.
Oh man,
perfect
dude.
example.
Yeah, I mean he's like, what's that movie with Christian Bale where he's like the business American Psycho?
Scrooge McDuck is.
He's American Psycho in cartoon form.
No, he's the antithesis of another character that you have, which is what's the eagle face dude?
Same.
No,
evil face dude.
The big eagle face dude with the business suit on. Can't remember.
Oh, Bullet Silver.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
You know what
I'm
saying?
Totally.
He's like
yeah,
totally.
Yeah.
He's
capitalism.
The same capitalist dude.
Yeah.
But.
And that's weird you say that, man. I never thought about that, because even he's got a kid too.
Yeah.
Just like Scrooge
he
has
doesn't
his
have
nephews.
3 of them, but he has.
Well, but even if they are his nephews, so it's not
Right.
his actual children. So he doesn't give a fuck about them as much as he would if they were actually his kids. But yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, definitely. Because I mean, DuckTales, man, that's one of my favorite cartoons, and that shit was on for a long time, and it's one of the best cartoons. But I've gone back and rewatched it within the last recently, and I'm like, damn, this cartoon is messed up.
Some weird shit.
It's got a lot of weird, questionable stuff where it's just like, this is what do you learn from it? You learn to be like just like a greedy, capitalistic, like self-involved. Like it's not really terribly.
Listen to the music of the day.
Sure.
You know, just everything about the 80s was that way.
Yeah, no, a lot of it was. A lot of it was like, you know, just new technology and making money.
What would you say has been like the most pivotal moment since you started, from the time you started to do the comic book till now? Like, what's been the most exciting pivotal moment of that?
I mean, showing the movies on the big screen has been really rad. Like, there's just something about like seeing these things I work on and have them be like, you know, on a big scale with other people watching the same thing at the same time. It's been just really rewarding, because I mean, for so long, like I was making comics and people weren't seeing them, and I was like doing them by myself. Like, it was so solitary. And then now, like, this cartoon I'm doing, like, it's brought me closer to people like you and Blake over here. Like, you know, it's just like, it's helped me like.
We got to call him by a different name. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, he's anonymous. With like wear out his face.
That's Jeffrey. No, that can't be Jeffrey. That's
Jeffrey's not on Jeffrey's.
Blake's fine. There's a lot of Blakes, I guess.
All right, that's true.
But yeah, showing the movies live has been really rad. It's been really fun. I think people like hearing people laugh. You know what I mean? Like together while watching it. That's like honestly, because I think like playing a band, it's cool to see people dance. You know, when it doesn't happen very often. When it does happen, it's like, yeah, this is exactly why I do this. And I think showing the films and hearing people laugh, especially with like a lot of people laughing at one thing at the same time, like it just makes me so happy. Like it's kind of like a narcotic, and I just like want way more of that. You know what I mean? Like I just want to keep like having that situation where like I can hear people laugh at these things that I think are funny on screen, and to be there to hear them laughing at those things. Like in Post Punk 2 when like it was a Cloud Bro basically comes up to Lady Death, and he's like, Lady Death, you know, like I want to ask you on a date for Mexican food and a movie, and she like kills him or whatever. Like there's something he says in that speech where like, and also Alien Jesus, people like that was another part too where your Alien Jesus like cracked people up, dude. And people since have told me that that's like one of their favorite parts of it. So like stuff like that where it's like, I mean, I wrote that, but like your delivery and you and a sound effect on that is what actually, you know, really drove it home and stuff.
I mean, I think the writing is pretty deep.
Thanks, man.
And relatively incredible. Like
I appreciate that.
All through it.
Yeah.
It's very soap opera-ish.
Yeah. There's actually going to be a storyline called Soap Romperas later on.
Romperas.
Yeah, Romperas. Which is based on a short play I wrote. Where I got the idea from that. But yeah, no, definitely, you know, growing up with a mom who like had to take Days of Our Lives every single day of her life and that kind of stuff.
I mean, when you have 50 characters.
Right.
And for them to interact with each other.
But romantic drama is pretty fun, man. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's like no one is above hearing about like, oh, so-and-so broke up, or oh, so-and-so is together now. Like there's just something like real primitive about like wanting to know, but like
there's also
who's screwing who or who's breaking someone else's heart. And so like for me, like I like to write about that kind of stuff. Like I like different characters to like scene, like, because you know there's like the scene where like one of my favorite absolute scenes is when Val and Duck seem like they're about to start hooking up, and Duck's sitting on Val's lap, and then Robbie plays It's Now or Never, and
she hops off.
Yeah, and like when I made that in the comic, I was like, man, this is some good stuff. And
there's the same soap opera vibe goes through a lot of early comics.
Yeah,
and
romance comics especially.
I think that you like the only way you could know this is by watching 2 or 3 of the episodes.
Yeah.
That the characters all intertwine like a comic.
Definitely.
And
because it's based on a comic.
Yeah. Well, it was written as a comic, but it's like was written as a comic and then relayed to film as a comic.
Right.
And even like frame for frame.
Yeah.
Like a huge part of that is everybody you get involved. Would you care to name some of the people that you have involved with the vocal?
Sure.
Recording of that? Because everybody does a jam up job.
Definitely. So I mentioned, you as Alien Jesus, and Halloween Head, and what the other one can't think of. And then Adams, Adams basically having done the Duck the Punk record, like he had to be Duck the Punk.
He was definitely.
It was like you're already singing him, like. And I mean, it was like, and he even wrote some Duck the Punk stuff that I used like down the road and stuff too. So that was a no-brainer. And I think that too, like I think people like Duck the Punk, I think more than any other character. I think he's probably most people's favorites. And especially because like Adam does that, like, which is totally, he added that. Like I wasn't ever in the comics, but he like made that his own. You know what I mean? Like he sort of like created that, and now it's like become a fixture in the comics. And then Lydia has definitely been a big deal because she's been Val, who's obviously a big character, and she's Sue, and she sings all the stuff that Val sings. So she's done a lot, and I'm really grateful that she's been a part of this movie. But even before we did this, like we had her do some songs for the Absurdist play, which will be in a cartoon later on. But so she'd already been doing stuff, and so obviously she made sense to go to. Jen, who's Remy, does a really bang up job, and she was like a big part of the first episode and has been in the episodes since then. But I think Jen is really funny. Like Jen is, and I love working with Jen. One of my favorite sessions was like me and Jen and Adams. It was really cool. So she's really funny. Skylar does Muddy, and it's funny because like
that's a good character.
Yeah, and especially the way he approaches it, because like I kind of in my head I saw Muddy as like kind of like a fratty white sort of like douchey rich kid, and he came at it more as like
I think he still kind of feels that way.
He does, but like his voice is like of like a old blues singer, and when I heard it immediately I was like, oh my god, this is awesome, and I never thought about it that way. And as soon as he did it, it's only been the way I can think about it ever since.
And that's what happens with the rich kids. They always get the little extra blessing too, the talent added in.
Right. They have the wealth to be able to pay for their talent, and I think they probably all want to basically like be rappers and blues musicians. But so that's the kind of irony too, is that like he is and sounds like a sort of like early blues musician. So Skylar kills it, and just some of the lines he does are just so funny. Like he definitely is some of my absolute favorite funny parts of the cartoon have been Skylar's lines. And then there's like a hardcore star who's Dylan, and Dylan does a really great job, and Mindy does Triangela, and
Triangela's an interesting character in there too.
Yeah. She definitely is a big deal in the story, especially early on with her sort of her trajectory.
There was a lot of plot development on that character.
Yeah. And she definitely only continues to be as important to the whole shindig. And then Clark does Robbie, and like I said, I think Robbie and Duck are the two main characters, and Clark kills it. Like Clark does a really good job. Like he's like a natural actor, or I think he's just a really good actor, and it's good to have somebody that
he does music locally.
He does, right? Yeah. He's in Traumgeist, and
that's it.
He does. I forget what his solo, because he does like a kind of ambient experimental noise type music. And
I think that's one of the great things about what you got going on with that. And I don't want to like, because I know there's several characters we could talk about.
There's a lot, yeah. I left out some people. I could probably remember them all.
Well, just throw names out, like who's involved in
there's
it. Like,
my wife's about to be in it, and then Rachel's gonna be somebody down the line. Because there's
I mean, you have
Greg and Ellen who were in Laser Bones, live in Charleston. They're Freddie and Dog Barkman, and they're a big part of all of this too, because they wrote one of the songs they wrote the song Sidekick Freddy that's in episode 3. They wrote that it might have been a year or two ago. So they've been like people who have been in on it.
Yeah, Celia Gary,
yeah, she plays Penelope. Yep.
She's actually a pretty big part in there.
Yeah, and Penelope definitely continuously is another role that like grows, gets bigger, or you know what I mean. Like she wasn't in episode 1, but episode 2 beyond, she's definitely in it pretty big. Who am I leaving out?
If you leave anybody out, I'm going to go ahead and say they will.
Jackie Mayo,
you can always compensate later, because I'm right.
Edit that in.
Yeah, I can edit it in.
Yeah.
But until they see the video that we're going to put out.
Yeah. There's some other people who are going to record this month for it. It'll be for the first time. Like Muka Vogel is doing a character called Duck the Minimalist, and there's some other people who are going to be coming in on it.
I mean, all these people are like involved in music.
Yeah, that's
every single one of them.
Almost every single one of them is either like a poet/writer, or a musician or artist.
Locally.
Yeah, exactly.
Relatively local.
Yeah, they're either a writer, a musician, or an artist, or any combo of those three things.
I mean, music is a big part of the whole thing.
Oh yeah, it is.
Sure.
It's definitely.
It's about music.
It's about music.
Definitely if anything, it reminds me of an animated version of Spinal Tap.
Yeah.
But like on a soap opera scale, where like there's incredibly too many characters to keep count of unless you like watch it like it's Stranger Things or whatever.
Yeah.
And you can't jump in on number 2 and know who every character is.
Strange, I think.
As well as you can't watch just number 1 and know the characters. You know what I'm saying?
I do. Weirdly enough, is I do think number 2 is the only episode where you can come in and add it right there. But after number 2, you pretty much have to watch everything that comes before.
Right.
Because like number 1 obviously makes sense. It helps inform number 2, but I think you could hypothetically watch number 2 without number 1. But I think it's the only place. I think it's the only entry point besides obviously the beginning.
You can watch all of them in any order.
Yeah.
If you just listen to the music of it.
Yeah, like the music videos.
I mean, it really is like you could put it on and it be like a music video with some interesting banter.
Right.
And it really hit me as like it's one big long music video.
Yeah.
Because I mean, music's a huge part of it.
It is. It's always there's literally never a point where there's not music in the thing that you're watching.
And it's not just like, you know, it's not something you harvested off of YouTube. You got this from people that you know that made the music.
Yeah, like either Gloom Cocoon made it, or like Saturnal Hex, which was our Rick's side project he had, or it's like a band that we've started for background music. Like we did a jam band session where we're just like, we're gonna be a jam band, and just jammed out, and we used a lot of that for the music at the Black Alley Cat. But yeah, so pretty much literally all, and Adam sometimes will like compose compositions. Like there's a program you can like, if you read music, you can like program the music that you write into the program.
He didn't tell me, just for the record, when I interviewed him, he did not tell me he could read music.
He can read music? Yeah.
He didn't say that.
He can.
That's pretty important.
Yeah, he's like a, you know, to me, like a genius composer. You know what I mean? And it's like, what's so cool about him having like with the background music, I just kind of let Adams do whatever he wants, and like he'll create some compositions, man, that are just like that blow my mind, because they'll like sound like Baroque or like classical stuff, and then he'll make some like weird experimental noise stuff that's like crazy sounding. You know what I mean?
That's how this guy is on the piano. I bet if he hopped over on that piano right now, he'd play some goddamn Bach and shit that nobody's ever heard before.
Yeah. And then play some noise, play some like
experimental. He'd play noise if I was recording it.
Yeah. If we made him. Like, whipped him and told him to do it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Nice.
If I was like, hey, you better get over there and play some music, he'd be like, oh, no.
Well, we're fire,
that's the way it goes, though.
Fire Adams and hire Blake. Blake's You hear that, Adams? No, I can't do that.
No.
He's too good.
You can't fire Adams because
we should have like a composer.
He's pretty much like
composer
your
wars.
Partner, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He's 50-50.
You fire that guy, you're alone. Now you gotta do that.
Exactly. Making comics by myself again. Yeah.
No, Adams is an amazing dude.
Oh,
He does
yeah.
some awesome shit.
Oh, man. I mean, just his label.
Besides Adams.
He has like, to me, he has the, like, one of, if not the best label in the Southeast. And especially cassette labels.
Oh, dude, I'm down on Pizza Hut.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, I'm sold on
He's put out some great releases.
If you like punk and rock music.
Yeah.
What's your commercial?
Or noise. Well, noise
What's
too.
your commercial for it? Go ahead and throw it in the mic.
Oh, man. I mean, I guess he wants to be a noise label, but he's released some of the best local punk rock and roll records that have come out in the past 5 years. So, I mean, like, that's the thing. It's like he makes great rock and roll punk rock records and great experimental noise records, but he also basically is willing to have anybody be on his compilations. I mean, he put out that 15-minute compilation.
And we're just anybody.
Right, and he was just like, anybody can be on this, they just have to make a song in 15 minutes. Make and record a song in 15 minutes. And it's like, who does that? Who just basically is like...
It sounded awesome.
It sounded
that record
amazing.
from start to front.
Oh, yeah.
It's a great sounds
record.
interesting.
But like, people just don't do that. But
and just for the record, the song that you made, would you care to talk about that? I would like to actually hear a little bit about what you were thinking when you made this song.
Yeah.
And you're pretty much debasing South.
Yeah. I mean, like...
and all the same, you also, it's a love story to why you're here.
I love and hate the South ever since I was a little kid. My dad's from Ohio, my mom's from Honduras, and you know, like I always was like, why don't we move to Ohio? Like ever since I was like 5, and my dad was like, because it's cold and it's not as good as there's no beaches. Like, you know, you always just be like, shut up, little kid, like you don't know what you're talking about. And then like, you know, once I got to like probably college and started having like a really, really fun time, like going to Clemson for like, you know, my master's and my bachelor's, like, and I started playing with like musicians that like, you know, like knew what they were doing, opposed to just like random kids, you know, on the
People
street.
that made you learn how to get.
Yeah, exactly. People who actually could show me things I didn't already know or whatever. Like playing with them in college, like was like I had a lot of fun, and then so it was like, man.
So you're saying it built up your expectations.
It turned the South into like a really cool place. You know, it wasn't just like. Because for a long time I felt like alone, you know what I mean? Because there wasn't like a lot of people I knew who liked weird music. You know what I mean? It wasn't a lot of people I knew who were like into crazy music or who were like, let alone intelligent and artistic and stuff. It was just like, so I kind of just hung out with whomever I could, who probably just hung out with kids who got fucked up in hindsight. But then in college, it's like hung out with people who got fucked up and were smart as shit and were cool as shit. You know what I mean? So it was like, finally for the first time in my life, I was like really happy to find like my sort of tribe. And so for me, the South was finally like a rad place to live. And it's been like that for a long time until recently, where like I feel like, you know, I hate to say it, but I just feel like me and what I do like hasn't gotten that much attention in the South. I mean, it's been like our friends and people involved with it who like the cartoon, who like my comics, who like my band.
I mean, we weren't friends with you necessarily.
Right, well, yeah, exactly. I mean, I met you guys at Cinema Series, and just like from just that, we just like have kept like, and it's the same with me and Adams. It's like I met him at a house show, and then just like immediately was like, man, I like hang out with this guy, and then it was just like we kept hanging out, and then we just kind of became best friends.
Just don't sell yourself short. That's all I'm saying.
Well, but I guess what I'm saying though is that like it's not like I don't have people who are like wanting to.
Yeah, with money?
Yeah, I guess, man. Which I mean, I see like a lot of other people in this town doing creative stuff, and it's like people are willing to sort of like throw money at it and also be like, "This is awesome." And
Who
point
does
to
that though? I mean, that's kind of a rarity, really.
I don't know, man. No, it does. It does.
No, it does.
There's people in this town who like
not in this
make
town.
stuff. There is. Who
this
makes?
is.
So who makes stuff and do well with it?
I don't want to say names. You and I had
No,
conversations.
we're not talking.
Yeah, but there are. There's definitely. You know,
there's
Augusta,
also the local scene. I mean, you know what I'm saying? That's a dude.
There's Augusta bands and musicians and artists.
I guess I just name dropped somebody, but I'm just saying.
I mean, I'm just being like, you know, like, you know, what about me? But I don't know. That's kind of how I feel, and I feel like
the thing is too.
Areas.
There's a second side to this.
No.
The song that you're talking about that made you feel that way. You also express it as a love song because you go through many, many things that you love about it.
Sure.
And I think it's one of those old Hank Williams songs.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Where he's like telling you how much how shitty it is, but at the same time.
Well, that's another thing too about country music itself is that like country music is another love-hate genre. Right. Because I mean, I
hate it, but I
I hate most of it, but I love Hank Williams and Merle Haggard and like, you know, all the female like early like 50s and 60s country singers, like, you know, Dolly Parton and Emmylou Harris.
Before you get on to any more country, because I will not endorse country more.
But that's a perfect representation of the South, man.
Yeah.
It's just like there's like most of the South, I dislike a lot of like elements of the South, but then the parts I love, I like.
What's the name
love
of
with
the song?
like every fiber of my being. Like
what's the name of the song?
Which one? Oh, my song? Yeah. Oh, sit. Which is that Mitch Hedberg joke where he's talking about like people in the South don't pronounce their vowels. So oh, sit.
I thought it was Oh Sally when I first heard it.
Yeah.
Because I just listened to the record and I thought he was saying Oh Sally.
Oh Sally.
And turned out it was saying
Oh South.
Oh South.
Yeah. But yeah, man, I just
it was very moving. I think even Rachel, you can admit that I was listening to that song quite a bit.
Nice. I just hate how conservative the South is. I guess is the whole point. You know, because it's like there's like Athens and Charleston and Atlanta, where those places are like, you know, pretty liberal, but they're still South. But yet, like, I've never lived in a city like that. I've lived in like Clemson. I kind of lived in Charleston for a year in West Ashley. So that doesn't count. But most places I've lived in, like Somerville, South Carolina, and here, and even Clemson, have always been pretty damn conservative. You know,
That's yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not conservative. You know what I mean? Like I'm very much like
Well, I mean, nobody in this room's conservative,
Right.
Except for Blake over there.
except for like
He voted for Trump. I'm telling you this. Gotta watch that guy.
yeah, Republican.
I love him.
Yeah.
I love him. I got a very like
Oh, you're
little
gonna
part of
get
my
it
heart
later.
over here.
You're gonna get it.
No,
It's
there's
coming.
like a little
It's
part of my
documented.
heart over here that's one nobody will ever have but Blake.
Nice.
Ever.
Which I got,
Wait,
I got
what
love
the
for you too, man.
I love
Yeah.
you.
But
Leaving.
It's alright.
Leaving.
he
How
voted
that
for Trump.
affect on
Yikes.
people?
He didn't really vote for Trump. I think I made that up.
It's a subtle movement.
Now I don't know what is real, but yeah, man.
Yeah, I mean,
I wish people weren't so.
I love
I mean,
that song.
closed-minded.
I love that song because you roll through so many elements of that, and even on a political level.
Thanks, man.
Um,
And I'm sure that you obviously have gone through the same thing.
oh, dude, I've got my entire first record. I don't even know if I've ever played it for anybody that I know,
Yeah.
except for Rachel.
Mm.
It's one of those things I don't show people.
Yeah.
Because the reception to it was entirely shit talking a certain president that we had at the time,
Yeah.
and it was also shit talking like people in general.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, no, like it was very opinionated.
Nice.
The entire record,
Nice.
entirely too opinionated.
Yeah.
It's a very hard listen.
So I think that's cool, man.
Rachel loves it,
Yeah.
but
Wait, which record?
only
are we
because
talking
His
she's
about?
first record.
the
Oh.
like the I can't remember the name
Iron
of it.
Tracks.
Iron Track record that I made. It was a long time ago. The only reason I made it though, it's very admirable
Nice.
because I promised myself a long time ago before I made it that I was going to make one record before I die, and that was it. It just happened to be this ridiculous assault on humanity.
Oh wow. So just like not even just the South, but like
Yeah,
life itself.
yeah. There's plenty of anti-republic. Like it's totally liberal the entire way through.
Yeah.
It's 100% liberal, but it's like the at the point of being like what the Christians are.
Like
But
preaching.
the opposite of
You
that.
see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But like
That-
you know,
the
in my,
antithesis.
for my it was like for me it was if I was a Pentecostal
Okay.
and I was like rolling around on the floor that hardcore.
Speaking of tongues.
If I could take that and put it on a record, I've already
Which
done
is
it.
funny because Flannery O'Connor has a story. So it's one of my favorite novels called Wise Blood, and there's a preacher. He's a street preacher who starts the Church of Christ without Christ. That's
awesome.
That's what it sounds like you did basically. Which I think that's like
But no, there was no religion. There was things knocking certain aspects of religion.
yeah.
But it was not religious.
Right. See, Church of Christ without Christ.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
It was kind of like an album that I will never let you listen to because it was way too preachy.
But see, and I guess that's the thing, man, is that like even with that Flannery O'Connor story and what that album you just talked about, like there's some part of the South that is also that is
Right.
also this weird like super punk rock element. And even we see with Merle
that's everywhere.
Haggard and Hank
Yeah.
Williams, like those country singers are like really raw, man, and they're really honest, and it's like a lot of like what translates to a lot of punk bands, but like they're country Southerners or whatever, and so like I guess it's just like this frustration and which came out in that song because like I don't understand how that stuff exists and it's very Southern, but like how people I guess only like it when it's like said and done, when it's gone, when those people are dead, and it's like yeah.
No, those aren't the people that were there before.
The people that come later.
Different
basically.
people, yeah.
Right. And
Those are the smart ones are eventually going to be later on anyway.
but it doesn't have to happen that way.
No,
you know
it
what I
doesn't
mean?
because you're smart and because like everybody in this room is smart people.
Yeah. Right.
It doesn't mean that there's not 22 of them down the street of this road.
Right. And it's not their fault. I mean, you know what I mean? That's like I'm not judging them because I mean, like a lot of what people's like inability to sort of like be educated is like the fact that it's a cycle that goes back generations and generations. So I'm not like hating on people who unfortunately.
Well, like I said, we aren't going to use this saying you hate people and shit. I'm like, I won't put that in the article, I promise.
But I guess maybe that's it. It's just I feel that like maybe more people who are educated need to be less afraid to support things that aren't the same old things. Agree. I feel like that's the thing I find is the big problem I have with the South, with Southern culture, is it's so easy for somebody to be like, I'm educated, I'm into like, you know, art or music, but just they will like the most obvious musicians and artists because like that artist has a number of followers or is like, you know what I mean? Like the popular, the artist, and it's like they're less inclined to sort of like something that doesn't have that level of like, you know, obvious
that shit appreciation. In a lot of cities that are not even as big as Augusta.
I mean, but I feel like bigger cities...
That's kind of what I think I don't understand
about it.
No,
but see, I think bigger cities you have like bloggers.
Well, I mean, it's
like
always going to be easier in bigger cities. Right, but I'm saying there's smaller cities that a lot bigger music has come from because they all get together and have a fucking scene instead of the scene.
Oh, but they move away though. Like the guy washed out. Like he moved from I forget what city in Georgia, but he moved to like I think Athens or something.
Right.
And, like.
But honestly, I mean, your hometown should be your trampoline.
Right.
You know, if your hometown supports you and gets you out there, and if you're appreciated in your hometown and you go beyond, there's nothing, I mean, that's life. That's like improving yourself, changing, and then a new person steps up, and the trampoline, you know, sends another great musician out into the world.
Right.
But you don't get that trampoline. See, the thing is, here's the thing. The trampoline is everybody that listens to that person.
Mm-hmm.
The trampoline is everybody in that group.
Who shows up.
You know, see, what I feel like in Augusta's happening is a bunch of tiny little things, and they all think that they're going to be able to boost themselves up, but they need to boost each other. They all need to, it needs to be a bigger deal.
Yeah.
And like I said, that's not one of the things that's going to be in the interview.
I mean, it could easily be in
the interview. We're not talking about anybody.
That's a different interview.
No, I think it's
all I'm saying.
And I think for me, I think a lot of it too is like the same old thing. I think that's what I noticed my whole life is just seeing people who are creative, but like they're just doing stuff that's derivative because they know there's going to be like you know, appreciation for it. So like, and like when I saw Black Glamour, it was really refreshing because there wasn't like it's like I saw y'all and it was immediately like. They sound like this band. Like y'all, there was a lot of originality to it.
Well, let me put this. I'm definitely putting this in the article. Keep going.
But no, and I think that's I'm starting to see more of that in this town. But that's what I think I wish there was more of. Is that just people who like aren't intentionally being like, I want to be a Led Zeppelin cover band, or like I want my band to sound like Nirvana. Like just wanting to be so specifically like something else that's already popular. But like going into it like. I'm just going to basically do whatever I want, and I'm not going to care what anybody thinks or says about this or how they feel about it, because I like it, and that's all that matters. And I think, like, when you get a lot of people doing that type of thing, like, it's awesome. I mean, that to me is that's what makes a legitimate scene.
It is if...
And I think everyone thinks that way.
If everybody can help each other with it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You can't just be a fan of one type of music and expect in a small community that's gonna you know.
Well, and that's another thing too, man. I think a lot of people like they get so like specific in like their likes. Like I only like country or I only like hardcore music, and so they only go out to see because you were saying about like uniting everybody, and I think like maybe there has to be like a band I guess that can do that. That can kind of like make a style that really like is more not more eclectic, but somehow can like.
It's definitely Bad Glamour, just so you know.
No, I was just about to say that, man. I really do think. I believe that. I really believe that y'all's music can.
We're taking y'all with us, though.
Y'all
are going with us.
I mean, I'm the first one to basically say that y'all are definitely my favorite band in town right now.
Oh, get the fuck out of
here!
No,
man.
Now you're.
That's awesome.
That's a good way to get a good article.
Y'all killed it, dude. Y'all killed it.
That's a good way to get a good article.
That's the one quote.
I'm totally just ignoring everything you said, and I'm gonna write. Yeah.
I mean, y'all are credible, dude. Like y'all, you don't sound
never see Bad Glamour.
Like no one sounds like y'all.
Not even real, man.
I don't know of any other Augusta band that's ever sounded like y'all. And y'all.
Now that might be true. I might agree with you, but you know,
and y'all, there's not even like a point of reference where it's like I can say y'all sound like. I mean, y'all remind me somewhat of Portishead, Sylvanesso, but by no means.
You just made her want to touch herself by saying that he
Portishead. Like but even Portishead, man, it's like a band like, you know, one of those underground. I mean, they've been around since the '90s, but it's not a household name, dude. People.
All right. Enough about Bad Glamour. I'm not.
Bag Bammer's rad. Y'all should
you
take over the
I've
universe.
got a 2-part question for you.
Okay.
Part
A.
All right. I need musical influences for you personally as an artist, and musical influence for your projects.
Okay, for my projects in my art.
All right, like musical influence for you in relation to Pizza Hill, and musical influence for you as an artist.
So I guess the Rolling Stones are like the easiest band for me to think of when answering that question, because like the Stones, like their early stuff is like real garage rock. You know, it's like basically proto-punk. You know, and a lot of like the Nuggets bands, like the '60s garage rock bands, were just basically trying to sound like the Rolling Stones, but weren't like as like musically talented. And then you had like even the Stones like in the '70s and like '80s and stuff, like they kept like changing up their style, and they got kind of be almost like a jam band sometimes, where they would like, you know, play like 10-minute long songs and stuff like that. And so like, and I like all of that stuff. Like I like, you know, the Stones, Can't You Hear Me Knockin', which has, it's like a 6 or 7 minute long song, and there's like this whole jammy, like, you know, acid jazz middle part with a sax solo. Like that song rules. But then you got songs, you know, like This Could Be the Last Time, which is just a rockin' garage rock tune. It's like punk before, you know, punk existed. And so like that band to me does the best job of like being both jammy and sort of like.
I mean,
punk
Rolling
rock.
Stones, weren't they the first band that ever had and it's talking about my generation.
That's the Who.
Oh, never mind. The Who.
But the Who's
is
another-
not a band that we've been talking about.
No, but I mean the Who too. I mean basically all that '60s stuff, man.
Never
like
mind.
the Kinks, the Who.
But that was
Cream.
like the first like electric guitar in a song that sold a certain amount.
'50s. I mean like Buddy Holly. And
I'm talking about like pedal guitar.
Yeah. But so like a lot of I love '60s rock and roll, and even like a lot of '50s rock, Buddy Holly and Chuck Berry, like just like the first 2 waves of rock and roll are just my favorite. I think they always will be my favorite.
Right.
But I lean more towards like the Rolling Stones with the Beatles Rolling Stones debate, because I'm more into like just the sort of garage rock, sort of like punk rock kind of like. I love pop too, and I think Rolling Stones have some great pop. But for the most part, there's a rawness to almost everything the Stones do, whereas the Beatles, it's sometimes more bubblegum, like it's sometimes a bit more just like melodic in a way that doesn't have that raw element to it. Anyway, so like, you know, and I like a lot of like obviously 90s stuff, because I mean I grew up in the 90s, so like, you know, Pavement and Built to Spill and like Sonic Youth and Nirvana and yada yada yada, like all those 90s bands are really awesome. And I always discover like new bands from the 90s I didn't know about. Like I got into Beat Happening within the last like.
You ever heard of God Lives Underwater?
I've heard of them. Aren't they instrumental? Aren't they kind of like Explosions in the Sky?
That's the band that I think should have been Nirvana.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But they had vocals though. They had a vocalist.
Yeah.
Okay.
They had 1 or 2 vocals on their songs. But they were pretty rad.
Nice. Yeah, man.
Should have been Nirvana. Could have been Nirvana.
Yeah. They just didn't have like a hunky lead singer. That's all
Yeah, they didn't
needed.
have Kurt Cobain.
Who looked like Kurt Russell in Point Break. He looks just like.
You're talking
Kurt
about
Russell.
Patrick Swayze.
Or Patrick Swayze.
Yeah.
Right. Identical, man.
Now we're even.
Yeah. But yeah, man, it's, you know, and I love hip hop. I mean, like just like you, I grew up with like Wu-Tang and all the '90s, like hip hop stuff. So that's like I love that stuff too.
I'm waiting for some hip hop to get into the.
That's actually a book. The book that came out before No Funnies is Hand Claps. Like it was all these hand characters that like they didn't play instruments, so they would like snap and clap and beatbox and rap. Yeah. But and maybe one day once I finish, if I ever finish what I'm doing, I'll go back to that. But that was all hip hop stuff, and now it's like this thing is all rock stuff or whatever. But
what are your ambitions for the bigger picture as far as you go for yourself?
I mean, I'd love it if like just the cartoon I'm doing was on obviously like Netflix, I guess. I mean, it wouldn't necessarily make much sense on Adult Swim, because Adult Swim's like,
I mean,
each episode is like
I would
11
rather be
minutes.
on Adult Swim before anything else.
Well, but see,
only
like,
because I come from Aqua Teen Hunger Force.
yeah. But a lot of those shows are like self-contained episodes,
Yeah.
and they're 11 minutes long. And my episodes are like 45 minutes on average, and obviously it's like one giant story. So it would make sense to be on Adult Swim, because you don't watch Adult Swim shows from start to finish. You just turn it on whenever you want to turn it on. Whereas Netflix, like they archive that stuff where it's like the whole season comes out at once.
Right.
And you binge watch it and you wait for So because I thought about it, it wouldn't really make that much sense on Adult Swim, but it would make sense on like some streaming site like Hulu or Netflix. But I do think there probably would need to be, for people to really care about, there would need to be an animation team or an animator who like made it look closer to like the kind of animation you see.
I mean, I think you could do that.
I would hope that people would be down to watch my style of animation on like a streaming channel.
I think that would take away from what it is.
But can you think of any animation that people watch on streaming sites?
That might be why.
That's as lo-fi as mine, I guess. That's
like I said, it's analog. I know people.
It's not a bad thing. If I could be the first,
I know people stare at paintings on a wall for hours.
Oh, and trust me, if my cartoon could be the first like shit-fi cartoon on Netflix,
you're selling yourself short. I hope you ain't calling it shit-fi.
No, but I like that term in music, man. Like Times New Viking is a band that like really
New Viking sounds rad. Shit-fi sounds like shit-fi.
I mean, but
call it like
but it's like that subversive thing, though, man. It's like
like moving paintings before shit-fi.
I mean, but to me that's cool. Like I like the sort of self-deprecating element of it, because like. Shit-fi to me is a cool genre. It's a cool term.
That's cool.
Yeah, just lo-fi even, like lo-fi in and of itself is can be a negative term, but like I think lo-fi, like I love being called lo-fi, and I love music that's lo-fi. I mean, to me it's an automatic indicator of like this is pretty cool.
Right.
Someone like didn't care, like just whatever, they just did it because they wanted to do it, and I don't know.
I think you've already answered this question.
But even beyond that, man, I would love for it to be like a brand. You know what I mean? I like I hate to say it, but I like seeing like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Simpsons.
Capitalism talk.
Yeah, man. I mean, I
gotta make money.
Dude. I would love to see like this post-punk stuff like on just lunchboxes,
I would love
thermoses, and I mean, I think that would be rad. But obviously, I think the thing about it too is like. Recently, cartoons have always been for little kids until Rick and Morty and BoJack Horseman. Like I feel like very recently.
See, BoJack Horseman, that's simply like that's not super finessed.
The animation wise, I mean, it's
just another person drawing it.
It's really not.
It's pretty dope to me.
I mean, I think that I think that what you're
like the animation quality of it.
In terms of you saying there aren't any other. Shows out there that are pared back.
Well, I mean, it's South Park.
But it's weird too. Have y'all seen Laser Wolf on Adult Swim? That show's pretty minimalistic. But I mean, it's dope. Don't get me wrong. Like it's dope.
Dude, what you do is fucking dope. What are you talking about, man?
No, I know that, but I guess it's just like people. So what are you talking about? Like, I think it's like I've internalized this like self-deprecation of like.
You've just thrown it up on YouTube.
Like every artist is self-deprecating.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to like YouTube's a different beast than what you think it might be now.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing too, man. Is like people make money off of YouTube. Like there's like people get sponsored or like if you get so many views, you basically money comes in, and I guess that's the hope is basically just people. It gets that many views that people care about it enough that it gets because I think that's where we're at now. It's like how many likes do you have? How many subscribers? And like I mean for me it's like I'd rather spend the time like making a cartoon that I think is like deep and has like dope songs and is fun, and not necessarily like having to be like every 5 seconds like subscribe to my YouTube channel. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or whatever.
What
have
do you look
submitted
for?
the show? Sorry.
No, you go ahead.
Have you submitted the show to any regional like film fests?
So then it's so expensive. When I first made episode 1, I submitted to 4 film festivals, and I did this.
Which ones?
Oh man, they were I think they were like global. They weren't regional, basically.
So you haven't tried like not quickies because I think that's written plays, but I know that LaChat does a film fest. I know
seen it for Wages
not
of
Wages
Sin.
of Sin,
Okay.
Although that is.
But you can apply. You can send anything.
It's just the entry fees for that stuff.
No, there's no entry fee for
Well,
that.
I don't know about LaChat Noir, and also.
I mean, most of the local
Columbia,
stuff around here is not entry fee. Though.
What's the one in Columbia? Is it Indie Grits?
Yeah. Indie Grits.
Have you?
No.
I sent them your video. I actually know the guy that runs that.
Yeah.
All right. Y'all can talk about this later.
Yeah, but I ask you this because. You're shooting globally, right? But I would, just try to build
Right.
locally.
Yeah.
You know, not local, but
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
cast your net. Like,
If you were,
Yeah, we saw the Atlanta Fringe Festival like because we were in Atlanta recently. I was like, man, I should have submitted. 'Cause I saw it online, but yeah, that's another one I think would make sense, like the Atlanta Fringe Festival, which is like film and stuff. So yeah, there's definitely that kind of stuff which I should do more of. But yeah, I guess I got like a little jaded because like I was submitting to like I guess just like or not even international, but like I was like one in New York and one in California, and like the entry fee was like $50, and like submitted and never heard back from, and there was like 2 other ones, so they spent like $200. I'm like, man, that's not why I started doing this. I don't want to spend like a bunch of money on. So I've
it can
been
be disheartening.
yeah, but that makes way more sense doing like the ones you just listed. So.
but that's what that whole song you wrote is about.
Yeah, about being brokenhearted.
Yeah. Well, what would you say if you could pick your role in the local area scene?
Yeah.
As far as what would you like, art or music? Like, what would you pick as your role in?
So, like, you know, I'm really big into literature. That's what I have a major in, and I think like the thing with like reading like a good piece of literature is that like you want to talk about it. Like you want to essentially like you read this story and it kind of challenges you or makes you think about things in a way, and so immediately you're like, yo, have you read, you know, Franz Kafka's Metamorphosis or whatever it is? And it's like, yeah, all right, let's talk about it. Like, what, you know, what'd you think about it? And like, you know what I mean? Like a book club essentially. And I feel like I am doing that with my cartoon in a way I've never been able to, because like I feel like my cartoon is really like, you know, like a play like on steroids. Like there's just a lot there's a lot to talk about when it comes to my cartoon. There's just a lot of like topics and characters and like ideas, and I feel like it's a bottomless pit in terms of like something that I've created that can really just like bring up a lot of discussions. And I mean I don't, and it sounds really callous, but I just don't feel like there's a lot of other people, or maybe just to the extent that I'm doing it, creating stuff that really lends itself to that much just discussion, and it's also challenging in the same way where it's like it's challenging discussions and it's challenging topics, because like just with Pizza Perry that we were talking about a minute ago, right? And he was like, you know, the idea of selling out, like I'm gonna be in a band that basically sings about pizza, where there's nothing inherently wrong about doing that, but it really brings up a lot of discussions about like what's your motivation for playing music or being an artist.
That's when a French Fry Freddy shows up.
Right, exactly, and basically it does a better job of it than you do, and it's more popular than you are. But you know, obviously they got the idea from you and stuff. So I mean, like I guess that's sort of what I like to hope is my role in our scene is that like I'm kind of like a person who's creating something that like people are talking about, like because a lot of times like you go to an art show and you literally are in and out of that room in a minute.
No matter how much you appreciate
exactly,
what's on the wall.
You can literally walk into an art gallery and be out within minutes, and it's like you can't do that with my films because it's like as is the first 3 episodes are like 3 hours.
I haven't seen anybody get up and leave one of them.
And I mean, and that's the thing is I feel like from people I've talked to, or even discussions that we've had at those screenings, they've been really brilliant. I mean, like some of the best conversations that I've ever had with people in general about these types of issues when it comes to like lowbrow and highbrow and God and not God. You know what I mean? Just like these really deep, heavy issues that like every person struggles with on a daily basis. Like everybody like wants to know their place in the world, and I feel like my cartoon is like giving people a forum from which to talk about these things, but to talk about them in relation to a cartoon, so that no one's feelings really get hurt. Because it's easy to be like, oh, you don't believe in God? Fuck you. But with the cartoon, it's like, well, what do you think the cartoon said about God? And so I think it creates almost like a kind of a safe space to which to talk about like philosophical, religious, aesthetic types of issues without people like getting mad at each other, because it's like done in relation to the film and not like personal attacks on one another. And I think it's important. I think we need more of that. And I hope that like people are less afraid to sort of tell those types of stories and to create stuff that is kind of challenging in these ways, because like, you know, I'm doing it, so it's like, oh, well, I guess I could do that too. I don't have to be worried about being popular, or, you know, I can just kind of be myself and tell my unique story and not be afraid if people are going to like judge me for being controversial or vulgar or just, you know, what are the many reasons people are afraid to be themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
I got two more questions. I'm gonna wrap it up. One of them is, how would you, if you could change one thing about the scene?
About the scene.
I hate to say that.
Yeah.
But if you could change one thing about how people look upon everything else that everybody's doing,
Yeah.
what would you change?
I mean, I hate to say it, but like, I feel like I would want to see more animators make cartoons about people in bands, which has to be musicians making the animation. Because I feel like that, I mean, I feel like with the kind of thing I do, like, it has to be music first and then art second.
So you just need more people to relate.
Yeah, I mean, I think though, like, if there can be, like, hypothetically, even two more people who are, like, in bands who are making a cartoon about being in bands,
right?
Like, that right there, because it's like, okay, one guy's doing it, sure, but three people doing it, damn.
Well,
like,
that's 2 out of 3 people. One out of 3 people is going to get hit the dart on the dartboard.
Sure, but obviously the problem, though, is the level of time that has to be spent doing it, and I think that's obviously, I mean, that's what turned me away from doing animation until I figured out the easiest possible way of doing it, and I think a lot of people are still that way, because I mean, people just don't have time to sink in.
It is time consuming.
It's so time consuming.
Just having done, video editing for music videos years ago, it is very time consuming. You have to love it.
You have to, yeah, exactly. Like,
I mean, I think you do love it.
Having created this book that, like, I feel like is an important book, like, it's become this, like, addiction to wanting to basically make the whole thing into a movie. Yeah, it's just like the book is a giant beast, and I want to, like, make that thing as digestible and as accessible to people as possible, and that's obviously through these films. So I think that's the top of my list, is that, like, I honestly can't think of virtually any musicians who also make animation about being in bands, like, just locally or in general. I mean, like, there's, like, Metalocalypse was one.
That was amazing too.
Right, that was amazing, but there's that's it. There's really nothing else beyond that.
I mean, it goes back farther than that. I mean, as long as there's been film, I mean.
Well, you mentioned this is Spinal Tap, which is another example, but that was just one movie, right?
But there's also, like,
and even with
like many love letters, like what was that movie we saw with Danny Elfman's brother?
Oh.
It was, and I've never seen it before.
Yeah.
I would think I was being 40 years old seeing it, but it was incredible.
Oh, the weird one.
It was incredible for the time that we saw it.
It was about music.
The Forbidden Room.
Yeah,
or
it was
something? Was it the Forbidden Zone, right?
Forbidden Zone.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think I've heard of that, but I've never seen it.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a great movie, but music to video and film ratio, it was incredible.
Well, and we were talking about Scott Pilgrim earlier, and that's another example. But I feel like with all of the examples we just came up with, like, none of those are even come close to, like, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or or the X-Men.
I mean, you couldn't put that. You couldn't. That's one thing that can never happen here.
No.
Here's something that can never happen. Is that, aside from the song Iron Man being in the movie Iron Man,
Yeah.
the Marvel Cinematic Universe is never going to let new artists make rad music.
No, but I guess my point, though, is that, like, in terms of, like, music culture and art culture being fused, like, this is Spinal Tap, Scott Pilgrim, The Forbidden Zone, Metalocalypse, all of those are always really short, like, either one movie or maybe, like, a few seasons, but they never tend to be, like,
you
really
want something bigger.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying, is that basically, like, there needs to be something that is solely about bands, but there's, like, 10 seasons of it, or there's, like, 10 or 20 movies of it. There just needs to be, like, a really long narrative in regards to it.
Like a James Bond.
Well, you've really chosen a brilliant, long, like, with possibility for longevity, and I'm sorry for interrupting.
No, you're good. That's
but,
true.
I mean, you've really chosen, it's like the Wild Wild West in terms of, you can cover any style, any band you want, and you're not in danger of sort of being accused of ripping from someone,
Right.
because nobody else is doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Yeah,
that's really
definitely
cool.
nobody else doing what you're doing.
Yeah, and
I mean, maybe there's somebody in some obscure corner of the world.
right,
that,
right.
you know.
But I feel like I would feel like we would know about them, or you know what I mean. I feel like they would just, I feel like there's like a magnetism quality to people, like all of us. Like if as soon as we like sort of met each other, like it's just been. And like I was saying with me and Adam's the same way. Like the first time we met, it's just been like exponential amount of hanging out since basically. And so I hope that if there is somebody doing that, like we probably would have already hopefully known about them.
Well, I mean, that's how every rad thing that ever happens
Right.
eventually. But
Yeah.
a lot of times it happens with a lot more gusto. A lot of times it happens with a lot more plotting and planning.
And even like beyond, because the thing of like the book basically like it ends, but it doesn't have to end. So like hypothetically, like this cartoon I'm doing could literally be the thing I do for the rest of my life until I die. And then even like the bands that, because I had some other ideas for like, I mean really it comes down to just like whatever I like at the moment, like whatever band I like right now.
Who is the band that you like right now?
Oh man,
Besides
I just
Bad
got-
Glamour.
I was just thinking that. I just got a Dead Milkman tape and a Violent Femmes tape.
Oh, you're going back.
Yeah,
That's
I got
cool.
them from Criminal Records in Atlanta, which I'm not sure what to do, how to like channel that into parody stuff or whatever. But, and I'm trying to think what else I've been sort of really into lately. I've been reading a lot of Marvel. I mean, that never changes. But yeah, I don't know. I guess in post punk, I've been trying to listen to way more post punk than I've ever had in my life. Like I got Dragnet by The Fall, and that record is just so.
I wouldn't know where to start looking.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of like what would be the bands I would do that I haven't done yet would just be like straight up post punk bands, like do like sort of like a parody version of The Fall or Gang of Four or just any of those British bands that were like doing kind of like funky punk rock type stuff. So yeah, I think you're definitely right, Rachel. I think that's the thing that. And even we mentioned Metalocalypse too. I mean, like I think that's the difference. Is like that was one genre of music,
I mean,
right? And I think that's
a very like slim.
And this is
area.
Spinal Tap, just hair bands.
I mean,
you
you
know what I
could
mean? Any of
take-
that stuff always
You could
takes
take
like
the Boondocks. Has amazing soundtrack.
yeah.
The
But see, that's
Boondocks
different
from
though.
start to front has amazing.
But that's a soundtrack though. And there's always a soundtrack. But I'm talking about
Well,
like
they didn't make the music for it.
right.
You're right.
Like the
You're right.
songs aren't like part of the story themselves.
That's true.
Like you very rarely because there might be an episode where like Archie and his friends play in a band.
I don't think it
or
would
like
be the
Darkwing
same.
Duck like
This
picks
ongoing
guitar.
commentary and sort of not almost a farce, like not a farce, but
Yeah.
but this way of presenting them that like kind of calls out all the quirks and all of the tropes and all
Right.
of the
Have you ever heard of Nardwuar?
I've heard of them.
Nardwuar is a interviewer.
Mm.
He gave me my last question, so don't take offense to it. It's not mine.
Yeah.
Why should people give a shit about the work that you do?
I mean, and it's funny because you asked that as I was thinking something to say, and now I can tie it together. But I think that what I've found is like people who are in bands are the people that seem to care about the most about Post Punk Mutant Musicians. But it's also people who just like music as well. And what I found is like people who like music are the least judgmental people when it comes to music. Like it's really people who like don't listen to a lot of music that are like, this is the greatest band of all time, and all the other bands suck. Because it's easy to sort of like, because we've all met people who just don't really like music, and you're one of them. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's like, I mean, they're perfectly fine with just like turning on top 40 radio in their car, and it's like, so who are you listening to these days? And they're like, whoever is played every hour of every day on the top 40 station. But then there's the other side of the spectrum, which is people like us who have like this insane record collection, who like basically like, if we see any record and it's like, we're mildly interested in it and it's like pretty affordable. That's why I love cassette tapes so much, because cassette tapes are like the cheapest way to own physical copies of records.
At this point.
At this point right now. Because CDs, like, a tape on average is like, can be like $2 to $3.
CDs as cheap as
No, CDs are like $5 on average. Tapes are
I don't know.
tapes
yeah,
can be,
tapes are pretty cheap.
there's like
I would
$2 or
honestly
$3.
rather
Grant
have
skis.
I'd
Yeah,
rather have a
yeah.
tape than a CD.
And I can go all day about how much I love tapes because I mean just like the portability of it, you still get the album
Except
art.
for when they fuck up, they fuck up.
I like that though. I hate that about CDs. A CD gets a scratch on it, it's like this slow death roll.
Yeah,
where it's
I like that slow death because I can still
man.
listen to the other song on the record.
No, no, that's terrible. Because like it's either I love like
I like
tape.
listening to the other song now. This is if you hear that one song. All right, here's the thing. If your CD fucks up in your favorite song, you still got 7 songs you can listen to.
I know, but you don't get the other song though. But a tape,
a tape fucks up the whole thing.
And that's brilliant because you get a new tape.
That's the worst.
Then you don't have that tape, and if you want that tape, you have to rebuy it or get it.
I disagree with that.
I'm all about. I
used to want to slit my throat when I was a kid, and my tape broke.
But see those CDs, that CD skipping is the fucking worst sound.
It is bad.
No,
it is
man.
bad. Especially when it's hit the point.
Yeah. It's terrible. Yeah. It's death. I mean, like, a vinyl record skipping sucks too, but it's nothing worse than a CD scratch that skips. Yeah. It's the worst. It is the fucking worst. And then I get it. It's like back in the 90s. Oh, shit. I can, speed to whatever song I want. Cool. Yeah. But I never listen to records like that. I always listen to records.
They never had a
start to
compact
finish.
record player for my car, so I can't really.
Like, I'm a firm believer in listening to records from start to finish. Yeah. So, like, a CD, like, to be able to, like, skip tracks, I don't give a shit about that. So,
But if one track busts, though, that's my only point.
No, but see, that might be your favorite song, though, man. Like, your favorite
be,
song. Because, like, some records, like, have a standout song that's way better than all the songs.
When we were
and if that song was when it was scratched, I would be miserable, dude. I would probably buy that new record just to get the perfect.
If a tape went into a tape player.
Yeah.
And it ate the fucking tape. We would never put another tape in there.
Really?
So that, therefore...
But it's probably just a tape, though. It tends to be just a tape being old.
It left the player void.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And honestly, man, I've been thinking about it, and, like, the number of tapes... Because I've been listening to tapes for a while now, and the number of tapes I've had that have just, like, died... It's been like honestly.
Oh yeah, it's not a great amount. Yeah,
it virtually because that format is really durable.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like that thing, and obviously you can drop the shit of it, and it's not gonna break, or you know what I mean. Like it's a really and vinyl records are that way too, but it is easier to scratch them because the way you hold them.
That's one of the things I love about what y'all are doing.
The
Pizza Hill is y'all are throwing the cassettes out there.
Well, and it's the cheapest way to mass produce records. It really is. Like it's if you know what you're doing, like you can actually like. Do it for very little amount of money, but
I didn't get into all my good questions.
But just to answer that question, though, I think that's like just the people who like really like music, like they don't discriminate, like they just want to listen to music.
No, I don't know. I think everybody likes music.
No, I know, but I mean, like I think people who are like because it is like a level, like an exponential, like asymptote level, to whereas like if you
there's certain people who don't think about it the way we think about it.
Yeah.
For sure.
And I think that's sort of
He's
like...
asleep on the couch right now.
Hey, at least you're not only giving me help for falling asleep.
That's true. Anybody that falls asleep in here is going to catch it.
Out to the interview.
But yeah, for those people, man. For the people who just like, just really like fucking can't live without music.
Listen, I know
that's like who this is for. That's the people like I've always have the most love for. And I mean, I still love people who like, are real passionate about one band because they still do like music.
I'm definitely passionate about one band.
Because there's all
for sure
bad glamour.
No.
What one band is there?
Bone Iver.
No man, Animal Collective, dude.
Animal Collective.
Tame Impala.
Dude, don't even start with Tame Impala. You just hit a nerve just now. I love Tame Impala right here.
But I feel like they're becoming those bands that's like. They always changed it. It was like Kings Leon.
I love Bon Iver.
It was, Animal Collective at one point. Yeah. It was, there's always this indie-esque band that like, they're, big as shit. And it changes to some other band and, it goes away or whatever.
Yeah.
Which is fine, but I mean...
it's just an inspiration thing, really. If you do something awesome, 2,000 people are going to copy you right off the bat.
Yeah. But I always wonder if it's more so just like, if like Pitchfork or just some like, if the powers that be point to it and say this thing, and it's like every 20-year-old is going to be like, oh, Pitchfork says this. Which, I'm not going to...
I think Pitchfork is pretty reputable in their presentation of emerging great artists.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I'm not trying to like...
I think that falls off with with age. I mean, that's something that's always constantly evolving. It's going to be somebody else.
Yeah.
Like that that says that for that generation.
Well, I guess it's just like Pitchfork changes, I guess is the thing. And it's like easy to like, if you buy, because I mean like.
If you ever talk shit about Tame Impala again, bro, me and you are going to have words.
But I mean, you know, I mean the years that Pitchfork existed, it's changed dramatically from like the styles that they've, you know, or I mean obviously the music industry's changed too, but so I think it's like, I don't know, you just have to figure out the way. I think for me it's like finding like from people that I know and like learning from them what to listen to has always been like for me the best way to go about it, I guess.
Well, it's more personal.
It's more personal, and I think obviously like a store too, like having some kind of like record store to buy stuff from is in that way. So I'm always just wary of people who like really buy in wholeheartedly to like one voice, I guess. Even if it is somebody like Pitchfork or like Sub Pop or Stereo Gum, like any of these like really reputable who are like the way they are for a reason. It's to me, there's just
there's only one person I listen to when it comes to music.
Who's that?
Whoever's making my Spotify playlists.
Which is your bandmates. I feel like this conversation keeps coming back to that.
No. Like whoever's like making my favorites list on Spotify. I literally look forward to every Friday.
The daily mixes and the early
turning
releases.
on Spotify and there being a list of music that the computer compiled for me.
Yeah.
A computer, quote unquote.
Right.
I literally look forward to that.
But that to me is more democratic, I think, which I think is good because it's like it's not like the monopoly that can be, you know. I hate saying Pitchfork because it's not a good example, but like but corporations or whatever.
Pitchfork is they present. It's like they take a platter.
Yeah.
And they hold it out in this beautiful way, and they're like, "Oh, look at this!
Yeah.
These wonderful things that you can eat and listen to."
Right.
And if you're a real, you know, if someone really cares about the music,
yeah,
then you're gonna listen, but you're not gonna pick them all.
Right.
You know.
My favorite bands were definitely. I mean, for a long time, it was like every. You know what I mean? Like that was all I listened to type stuff. And I guess it's just been more recently, like playing, like in bands, like. Playing with other bands, I just buy their records, and that's how I find about like new bands, or obviously like a record shop.